Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The Sacramento City Council will come to order. Would the clerk please call the roll so that we might establish a quorum?
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Ashby is expected momentarily. Councilmember Laloe,
Here.
Councilmember Harris,
Here.
Councilmember Valenzuela,
Here.
Vice Mayor Chenier,
Here.
Councilmember Guerra is expected later in the meeting. Councilmember Jennings,
I am here.
Councilmember Vang,
Here.
and Mayor Steinberg.
I am here. Thank you very much. I know the two members will be here momentarily. You could all please rise. Councilmember Valenzuela, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Sure, please stand. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very, very much. All right, we do have two very important discussion items, but before that, we have the consent calendar. Are there any items that any member would like to pull off the consent calendar to be discussed separately or to be voted on separately?
I don't want to pull it, Mayor, but I do want to thank staff for the meetings regarding item 9 to help us understand the use for that site needed for the levee improvements and the public to know that we're going to commit to keep looking for a site for folks along that levee to be sheltered at while that construction begins. But unfortunately, this site is not suitable for that given what's going to happen. So I'm not pulling it from consent. I just wanted to make that small announcement and thank staff for the continued conversations on that project.
Very good. Thank you very much.
May I make a comment on number 4?
Yes, of course, Jeff.
So this is a lighting project in the Meister Tract in East Sacramento. We've been looking forward to this for a long time, and I'm very excited to get it underway. I just wanted the people in the Meister area to know that this will disturb their streets to a certain extent as we have to replace a lot of underground conduits. But it will be a major improvement in lighting for the neighborhood. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Can I get a motion, please, on the consent calendar in a second?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Is there public testimony, Madam Clerk?
Yes, I have one caller. May I have my caller, please? Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I am thankful to Council Member Venezuela. Would like to hear more detail on item number 9 and would like it to be pulled as a separate item. So I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I have no more callers, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'm not sure I heard the entire comments of the caller, but I understood the import of them. So, okay.
Well, and just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, for Ms. Harris's benefit, I didn't pull it from consent, but I'm happy to speak to you after the meeting about what's going on with that project so that you can learn more about those details.
Okay. Very good. Let us call the roll then on the consent calendar, please.
Thank you. For the consent calendar, Mayor Pro Tem Ashby.
Yes.
Councilmember Laloe.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Valenzuela.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chenier.
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra is absent. Councilmember Jennings.
Aye.
Councilmember Vang.
Yes.
And Mayor Steinberg.
Yes, the consent calendar passes. Mayor Pro Tem Ashby, you had mentioned that you had an announcement to make.
Yes, Mayor. Not so much an announcement as a statement, but thank you. I'm sorry I was running a little bit late today. I just couldn't let International Women's Day go without saying something. First of all, it was yesterday, although, you know, every day is a good day to celebrate women. It doesn't have to be limited to one day or 1 month, obviously, as you all know. And it's the first time in 6 years, Mayor, 6 years. This is the first time that I am not the only woman at this dais to celebrate International Women's Day, which is a very good thing for the city of Sacramento. So I just want to point out how happy I am to share the day, the month, and the dais with Councilmember Vang and Councilmember Valenzuela, these two fierce ladies who worked their tails off to join the Sacramento City Council and now very ably represents Districts 8 and 4 and the rest of the city with all of us. You know, if ever there was a year to celebrate how hard women are working, this is it, because COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted women, particularly moms who are trying to balance work and kids. And we know that. We've all seen the reports. We know that the number of women in the workforce has diminished significantly. It's a huge setback for women being able to move forward and pay their own way and have their own jobs. And we already have this pay gap, and it's already a major inequity for the balance between entry level positions and managerial positions and supervisorial positions. And then on top of that, some of the jobs most impacted by COVID-19, like nurses and teachers and grocery store workers, are predominantly held by women. So what an incredibly challenging year for women, and what an amazing opportunity for ladies to persevere. And so I just wanted to take a moment, Mayor, thank you for giving me that moment to, first of all, celebrate the hard work of women in the Sacramento region, to tell them we're here for them, that this is why we do what we do, that this is why we put things like childcare at the top of our priority list. This is why we fight so hard for vaccination clinics and getting kids back to school and libraries and parks, and we want to support families, and that I am grateful to have two wonderful ladies at the dais with me this year. So I guess that's it, Mayor. Thanks for letting us take a moment to pause and celebrate women on International Women's Day, or the day after.
I have some comments, but I think I'll save them for council ideas and questions about the great progress we're making in our city when it comes to women in leadership. And still have a long way to go, but it's a lot to celebrate. I'm going to hold off. I'd ask maybe the rest of the members to weigh in when we get to council ideas and questions, so that we can maybe end the meeting on the high note that Mayor Pro Tem started us on. So thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, very good. That's a consent calendar. We now move to the two discussion items. And first is item 10. This is Councilmember Vang, her leadership. And want to turn it over to you to kick this off and let us all, let me begin by thanking you for stepping up, stepping out. I will just say that what you've done so far has really been received with great enthusiasm and relief, frankly, throughout our entire community, that you really struck a chord for all the right reasons. Unfortunate as it is, I just want to start by saying thank you for bringing this forward, Councilmember Vang.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much for the opportunity. First, I just want to thank my colleagues for the opportunity to present this very important resolution to condemn racism, xenophobia, intolerance against the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. The resolution in itself, is truly just the first step in the work that we have ahead as a governing body and as a city. Your support for this resolution today truly reaffirms that this city acknowledges the harm and trauma experienced in our Asian community. As you know, Sacramento is home to over 500,000 residents, with over 20% of its population being of Asian American and Pacific Islander descent. And while we have been in this pandemic for almost a year, I think Asian Americans in this nation and here in Sacramento continues to be concerned about their health and their safety. And at the same time, while they're incredibly concerned, so many of them are on the front line front lines every day saving lives. I mean, we have an estimated 2 million Asian Americans and Pacific Islander serving on the front lines as healthcare providers, as first responder, and other essential roles in this country. But I do also want to share that anti-Asian hate and discrimination didn't start with COVID-19, while it did heighten due to the last administration racist rhetoric, which definitely emboldened some in this country. The hard truth is that there is a painful and racist history in this country and city towards Asian Americans, including immigration bans, denial of property ownership, forced removal into concentration camps that happened right here in our city in Sacramento, to assault and murder of Vincent Chen, who was a Chinese American who was beaten to death by 2 white men in the Midwest. And then just today, another report just came out that examined hate crimes in America's largest cities. And it revealed that while hate crimes in 2020 decreased overall by 7%, those targeting Asian people of descent rose nearly 150%. And while there are structural and institutional examples of racism, I know from personal experience that there are so many more incidents and hate and actions towards the Asian American community that goes unreported. I also want to take this moment to thank Kelly Shum for her bravery in coming forward to share her experience and report the incident that occurred at Mad Butcher Meat Market in South Sacramento. And I also want to give a shout out to the organizers and parents who are on the ground right now, who will be at Twin River School Board meeting tonight to address the board regarding the racist actions of Grant High School teachers in the heart of North Sacramento. There continues to be harmful and inaccurate narratives that paint Asian Americans and Asian immigrant community as a monolithic group, as a model minority, which I continue to emphasize to this council and to the public that it is truly harmful. It masks the disparities of our diverse community. Again, the multiple and the intergenerational harm and trauma in our community is painfully deep. And we have so much work ahead to do as a community. And I hope that I can count on your support today for this resolution, which will, one, really reaffirm our commitment as a governing body that we're going to work with Asian American community partners in support of data gathering that is culturally appropriate and that really acknowledge the systemic barriers to reporting hate crimes impacting our communities. The other piece is, really reaffirming our commitment to work with the community to develop community-led solution through the city's racial equity initiative that acknowledges the experience of Asian American and Pacific Islanders. I want to say, this resolution is not separate from the work that we are already doing. It is in addition to, and I believe that we could do this work through the racial equity initiative. Lastly, I just want to say, I think this resolution, what it also does is, one, acknowledges the harm and trauma in our community, but really affirms our recommitment to investing in community-based intervention. And what is really needed in this city is really long-term investment in people and resources to keep us safe and healthy. Again, like I said, as a governing body, we need to be intentional in how we serve, how we build coalitions and strengthen partnerships on the ground. I really look forward to working with all of you, with our communities and our departments to uplift all the shared histories and struggles of all Sacramentans, not just Asian American Pacific Islander, but all communities, right? And really understanding the different ways in how anti-Asian hate incident and how systemic racism actually shows up in our communities. Before we vote on the resolution tonight, I did have some questions for the city manager, but I'd be happy to ask these questions after public comment as well. And with that, I really do hope that I will get unanimous support from my colleagues on the city council. And thank you so much again for the opportunity to present a resolution. And I just want to reaffirm to the community that I know a resolution is just a piece of paper, but this formally, for me as a councilwoman, acknowledges as a city that this is something serious and something the city and my colleagues will take into consideration as we move forward in our work, in our city racial equity work ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much again, Councilmember Vang. We do have 12 members of the public who want to speak. I suggest that we hear from the public, and then, of course, I'll turn it over to members of the City Council.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. May I have our first caller, please? Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Pat Song Kushida, and I'm President and CEO of the Sacramento Asian Pacific Chamber of Commerce. We'd like to thank the mayor and council and for the leadership of Councilmember Vang for bringing this resolution to council for a vote. Adopting this resolution is a statement of a commitment by our city to combat the hatred, bias, violence, and discrimination that many of our AAPIs have experienced. We're encouraged that this resolution is only the start to devoting an appropriate level of staff time and resources to addressing racism and discriminatory practices towards the AAPI community and other historically marginalized communities. The Sac Asian Chamber was formed in 1993 to combat the passage of Prop 209, representing the interests of over 6,000 AAPI businesses that reside here. And we stand united with many other AAPI community-based organizations in support of this council and the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor and honorable council members. I will make this short. My name is Chino Rhodes. I serve as Sacramento Unified School District trustee for Area 5, which is right here in the South area, and I'm a resident of District 8. I'm calling in support of Councilmember Vang's resolution to condemn and combat anti-Asian hate because an attack on any community of color is an attack on all of us. As Martin Luther King once said, change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. And as the blessed struggle for justice and equity continues here in our great city of Sacramento, I stand in solidarity with our Asian brothers and sisters and all marginalized communities and ask you to do the same. Together, we can build a Sacramento for all. Thank you guys very much for your service and consideration. Southside Pride.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Okay. Mayor Steinberg, members of the City Council, good afternoon. My name is Alex Ng, and I reside in Sacramento District 7. I am the president of the Chinese American Council of Sacramento, a 501c4 nonprofit organization which has advocated for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders since its establishment in 1987. As some of you know, CACS has been lobbying against hate crimes and hate incidents with the Department of Justice and local law enforcement and the community, most notably during the Summer of Hate in 1998. Since then, there have been many issues, such as the injustice of the Wen-Ho Lee case, in which 50 of the 51 charges were dropped by the FBI. We strongly encourage all members of the community to get involved, especially our younger leaders. We must galvanize to combat hate crimes in all forms. CACS wholeheartedly supports the City Council member May Vang's proposed resolution to address hate crimes against AAPIs, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. We condemn the rhetoric of politicians and hate groups that have inflamed and promoted violent and illegal activities against all people of color. Our contact information has been sent to Councilmember May Vang's office. We appreciate her leadership and staff support and stand ready to help in any way. If you need more information about the Chinese American Council of Sacramento, you can go to our website at www.cacsweb.org. You can also contact me directly on my own email at xeng916 at sbcglobal.net.
Thank you for your
Thank you
comments.
for
Your
your
time
time
is
and effort.
complete. Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
Okay. Thank you very much for your time and support, Alex.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Ammon, and I'm calling on behalf of District 8. I am a local mortgage loan officer and an 11-year member of the Asian Real Estate Association of America. I'm calling in support of the council member Vang's resolution to condemn and combat anti-Asian hate, because I can't believe this is a day and age that we are still having people who are racist and hateful like this, especially to the Asian community, after everything they have done for our community, our state, and our country. I personally still remember my 6th grade teacher, Mr. Yoshikawa, taught us about what happened with the concentration camps that he was even born in Tule Lake. And I couldn't wrap my head around at such a young age how this could have ever happened. This is one of my first experiences of Asian racism. As Americans, didn't we learn from mistakes in the past, and aren't we trying to do better and be better? I was raised by a dad and stepdad who are cops and a stepmom who's a Superior Court judge. I was taught to judge people for doing the right thing or the wrong thing, not by their race, their culture, sexual preferences, or anything else. I have many Asian friends, and one of my best friends included, and I would just want to be here to speak up and have a voice to stop this discrimination. We need to teach people just to be better every single day and to love one another. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Kwan. I am a District 1 resident homeowner. I've been there for the past 10 years. I'm also a small business owner here in downtown Sacramento. I happen to be on the board of ARIA, which is a trade organization with over almost 20,000 active members. I am calling in today because Councilmember Vang has brought to light an extremely important issue that actually affects 1 in 5 people here in Sacramento. And I know in my district, that number is probably a lot higher. I just wanted to simply urge the council to publicly condemn racism and xenophobia against the AAPI community. I know it seems obvious that racism has no place in Sacramento, but we do believe it is so important for you as our leaders to speak out. Please send a clear message that there will be no tolerance for any acts of racism. We appreciate all you do, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Good afternoon, Mayor Steinberg and members of the council. My name is Cha Vang. I am a community resident and deputy director for AAPI Specific Empowerment Education Fund. I'm calling in to express my support for passing the resolution. I want to thank Councilmember Vang for bringing forth this resolution as a step to addressing the increase in anti-Asian violence in Sacramento, in the state, and in the nation since the beginning of the pandemic. I also want to thank Councilmember Guetta and his office for their leadership last year when these issues were first brought to attention. We all feel anger, frustration, sadness, and trauma from seeing our people experience violence, especially our elders. I feel all this every time my 83-year-old mom takes her walks around our neighborhood. We all know that a resolution is not enough. To address safety in our community, we must understand what makes us safe. Extreme economic inequality, systematic poverty, and racial inequalities make us unsafe and pit communities of color against each other. When it is concentration of corporate power and white supremacist institutions that are to blame. As a city, we must invest in programs that work and not more police. We need to invest in community-based organizations, trauma-informed and culturally relevant, effective solutions. Programs like comprehensive support and healing services for survivors, community-based street outreach and violence prevention programs, and real cross-community healing dialogues, and developing a restorative justice infrastructure. We must also center safety for all. No one is safe unless all of us are safe. We all deserve safety, and we are safe when people have what they need to survive to live with dignity and have trust and relationships rather than isolation and division. Safety is also having access to resources for clean and healthy environment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Good afternoon. My name is Flojan Kofer. I'm the Senior Director of Policy for Public Health Advocates. We want to first thank Councilmember Vang for bringing this resolution forward. Racism is a public health issue, and as public health professionals and members of this community, we are glad to support the mayor and council in making our position clear through this resolution. We also share your deep regret about the immediate circumstances that perpetuate it. Unfortunately, racism, both individual and institutional forms, is a deep-seated issue with long roots. Not only has there been historic and ongoing violence against our Asian and Pacific Islander communities, the communities have been targeted for discriminatory policies. We are reminded that the first drug laws in the U.S. were passed right here in California as a result of anti-Chinese racism. And we are also really excited to be able to think more about these issues as we move forward. Unfortunately, this is exactly who we are, but it's not who we want to be. So we strongly support this effort to firmly and unambiguously state our values and make a commitment to the next steps around long-term solutions, including culturally appropriate data gathering, removal of barriers, and long-term community-led solutions through the Racial Inequity Initiative. And we look forward to implementing this with you. Thank you so much for your support on this, and we look forward to unanimously passing this resolution.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hi, my name is Les Simmons. I'm the senior pastor of South Sacramento Christian Center, founder of the Simmons Center, also board chair for Build Black Coalition. I'd like to thank the mayor and the council, as well as Councilwoman Mai Vang, for your leadership at putting forth this resolution condemning hate crimes. I also like to congratulate Mai Vang as well. I know today or this month is International Women's Day and Women's Month, and I think we're making history here. I stand in support of the resolution. I actually happen to have gone to the press conference condemning it, and all of us here know what it's really like to experience an act of hate, racism, just these really cruel things that has happened over time. And I think what I'm really encouraged by is the fact that we're not standing on the sidelines. We are going to the front lines, and we're putting forth resolutions, and we're actively calling out systemic racism and hate crimes, and standing as one in our community. As you've heard me say before, and many of us have heard in a lot of our city actions or protest lines, there's a chant that our community lifts up, and it says, when one of us are under attack, what do? We stand up, we fight back. Today, I'm definitely standing in support of this resolution and lifting up that sacred chant that says, when one in our community is under attack, I'm standing up and I'm fighting back. When one person in our AAPI community is under attack, what am I doing? I'm standing up and fighting back. So we stand in support of this resolution. I want to thank Councilwoman Vang again for her leadership of putting this forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Yes, this is PJ from District 4. I would just like to say that I fully support this resolution and hope the city understands that an active role needs to be taken at every turn to undo the past 4 years of rampant xenophobia and racism being spouted from the largest platform in the land to a large portion of the populace that seems perfectly fine with that sort of rhetoric. We've long had racists that targeted API communities, but the recent rhetoric made them feel like they had representation in the highest position in the land. And to undo that sort of support of their racism needs an active level of anti-racism. This means not stopping at just blatant instances of racism, but proactively ensuring that potentially racist actions are called out to ensure there is no chance of such actions taking place, and letting people who espouse those sorts of feelings know that their feelings aren't conducive to a society with our diversity, and as such aren't okay. It's clear that they need to do some work as to what they feel threatened by other ethnicities and communities who just want to exist and thrive the way their own communities currently do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Good afternoon. My name is Nancy Zhang, and I'm a resident of Green Haven and District 7. I'm also the executive director of Hmong Innovating Politics. I am calling in support of Councilmember Vane's resolution to condemn and combat anti-Asian hate because for far too long, our communities have been invisibilized by institutions that claim to serve our communities. We urge the city to not see these anti-Asian hate incidents as isolated events when in fact they are a reflection of systems and institutions that continue to perpetuate violence against our community and other people of color. From the lack of transparency in how COVID-19 relief funds are being used, to vaccines not being equitably distributed to our communities, to the city's inability to produce disaggregated data, the manifestation of systemic disparities takes many forms and creates conditions that pit communities against each other. We hope this resolution is an acknowledgement that solutions the city has tried in the past are not enough. We urge the city council to take tangible steps to invest funding back into our communities and know that our organization is ready to work alongside you to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. My name is Keon Bliss, and I'm a constituent of District 4, as well as a recently appointed commissioner for the Sacramento Community Police Review Commission. And I just wanted to call in as a constituent to express my strong support for Councilmember Mai Vang and the resolution condemning racism against Asian Americans and Pacific Islander communities. I want to highlight and lift up other comments that have been made by previous callers as well, that this similar to what Martin Luther King said, injustice happening anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And we all need to stand up in solidarity with one another, especially those of us that are experiencing the lasting long-term impacts of racism within the United States and within the Sacramento community at large. And it's important for us to really remind each other, especially those of you on the council who are white, that this is not the responsibility of communities of color to bring this to your attention or to educate you about these issues. This is really the work that that folks that are the beneficiaries of racism, particularly white supremacy here in the United States, are experiencing. So I want to encourage every single council member to continue to reach out and actually talk with those of us that are impacted with experience racism every day, especially over the last 4 years with the hateful rhetoric that continues to rise here in Sacramento and beyond, and really look to the foundational the foundations and root problems that exist that has allowed racism and white supremacy to permeate through every institution here in the United States, starting with the Constitution of the United States. So I again want to thank Councilmember Vang and others for really lifting up this resolution, and I want to again encourage this council and all members of Sacramento's community to stand in solidarity with the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. And
thank you for your comments. Your time is complete.
Actions, so
will you make your final comment? Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
I'm actually a resident of Elk Grove, but I wanted to call in tonight because of the rise in anti-Asian racism impacting us here in the Sac region. Last summer, Bobby St. Allen, who is now the mayor of Elk Grove, instigated anti-Asian racism against the Hmong community. If you all really stand against anti-Asian hate, then I encourage all of you in joining me in condemning Elk Grove's mayor. In August of last year, I personally spoke to Councilmember Mai Vang, who was a trustee for Sac City Unified at the time. She agreed with me that Bobby's words and actions were deeply troubling and racist. She stated that the portrayal of the Hmong community by Bobby was both ignorant and troublesome. She said Bobby had actually texted her asking for an endorsement, but she ignored Bobby's request because she did not want to endorse a racist. Thank you for that, council member. However, you also promised me that you would release a public statement regarding the harm that was inflicted on the Hmong community by Bobby. Many Hmong residents patiently waited for that statement, and it never came. No excuse you can provide at this time will satisfy me or the people you've hurt by your inaction. And please note that your sudden courage in loudly proclaiming your stance against anti-Asian hate does not erase your complicity in allowing hate to flourish against the Hmong community. As someone who now sits on the city council, I hope you will understand your responsibilities to the public, and even more than that the public has a constitutional right to critique and hold you accountable as an elected official. Because over a week ago, your brother Chang Zhang attacked me online for exercising my constitutional right to critique you
Mayor,
as a public servant.
Mayor, point
Whether
of
you
order.
disagree
These
with me
comments
or not,
can't
I
be
do not
directed at a
know.
particular
I'm
council
sure
Yeah.
member.
level
Mayor,
of
Hold on.
comparable to yours.
Mayor,
Had I
just-
been
Well,
white
I'm going to
or
say
any other ethnicity,
something
you
here.
wouldn't have
Thank
dared.
you.
But because I am
Cut the
Hmong,
caller
you
off,
and your
please.
associates
Cut the
are only
caller off,
capable of
please.
criticizing your own. He attacked.
Mindy, cut the caller off, please. Thank you. People have the constitutional right, as we know, to express themselves in any way they want. But those comments by the caller are out of line. They're misplaced. They are not responsive. They're not relevant to the topic at hand here. You want to take up a personal or political dispute with any member, do so in the right forum, and let us celebrate and vote upon the actual resolution that's being brought forward here today. Please take your agenda somewhere else. Let's go to the next caller.
Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
My Yang Vang, you tore down our AAPI Children's Safe Haven while you were on the school board. You failed to speak up when the department set up to assist AAPI
Once
students were
again,
removed.
I'm going to declare
Actually,
these comments
you voted
out
in
of
favor
order.
of it.
If you want to speak to the resolution,
As
you're welcome
recent
to.
as this past
Otherwise, cut
summer,
off the
you
caller
failed to
right
speak.
now, please. Cut off the caller. Thank you. Next caller. I'm going to tell members of the public there is a relevance threshold here to be able to make public comment. This is not comments on matters not on the agenda. That's where it might be relevant, if not, I don't believe appropriate, but relevant to speak to any matter. This is about a resolution. And so speak to the resolution or else I'm going to cut you off. Don't attack the member. Not in this way, not on this resolution. Next.
Mr. Mayor, I have no more callers on this item.
Let's hear from members of the City Council. Okay, I'm going to speak very briefly and say silence is complicity. Silence is always complicity. And Councilmember Vang, you bringing this vital resolution forward says to the people of Sacramento that we will never be silent when any of our diversity elements are attacked. And this has been a very, very tough year for everybody, but especially the API community. For let's not forget or ignore the fact that we had a president of the United States that fueled this kind of hatred and rhetoric. And you know, when leaders give license to saying anything you want, no matter how discriminatory, bigoted, or hurtful it is, that does in fact give permission, unfortunately, to anybody who follows that person to do the same thing. Well, the opposite is also true. when you speak words of truth and power to the community about inclusion, about healing, about standing with and for each other, that's more powerful than the hate. And that's exactly what you and we are doing here today. And I commend you, Councilmember Vang, again for bringing this forward. Who's next? I got Jeff Harris, I got Jay Chenier, I got Angelique Ashby, Kitty Valenzuela, Rick Jennings. Very good. Let's go down the road. Jeff?
Thank you, Mayor. I think we got a little out of order, but I'll be very brief.
I'm sorry. I just follow the computer screen. I apologize. Maybe the clerk can help me here again. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'll be quick, and then Mindy can maybe sort it out.
Okay.
You know, a caller brought up the acts of the previous federal administration, and what you just said, when elected officials propagate or cultivate a speech that is hateful to any group or individuals at all, it does give people permission to move in that direction. I think that we are at an inflection point in our country where it's very important to bring to light these kinds of actions and hateful speech. It occurs in many, many forms. It can happen in the school, it can happen in a political organization, it can happen on the street, it can happen in the grocery store. I think it's incumbent upon us to carry this message forward all the time in our actions and our words on the council. And thank you, Mai, for bringing this forward.
All right, thank you very much. I now have the correct order. It's Councilmember Chenier, then Ashby, Valenzuela, and then Jennings. Councilman Chenier, Vice Mayor Chenier, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll also be brief. I just want to thank Councilmember Vang for bringing this. She said it's just a piece of paper, but we have to do more. This goes so far beyond it, and there's a reason for doing it. It's sad and unfortunate that we need to, but as elected leaders here, I think making this statement, taking this stand is always going to be important to show the direction of the city. I absolutely hope this is not who we are as a city, but what this does is just make us redouble our efforts in this area. I think we've done a lot of good work. There's a tremendous amount to do, and the proof will be in the pudding in what we do and how we do it moving forward. So Mai, thank you very much for doing this. Mayor, I want to make sure I'm an I vote on this. I have to jump off the call at 3 for a little bit for something. I'll be back after that, but in case you vote while I'm gone, I'd like to register that as an I vote.
Right. I think we will be done within the next few minutes. So I think you'll have time to cast your vote.
Well, that's what I got. Thank you. And Mai, thank you for doing this. It's important.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thanks, Mayor. First of all, I just want to say how proud I am of Councilmember Vang. It takes a lot of courage and bravery to step forward. As you can see, thank you to some of the callers for reminding us why we need this resolution in the first place. And if you don't think that being a leader is hard, maybe watch the last 10 minutes of this meeting and see what it takes. The arrows get slung your way, even when you're fighting for something as true to our form as anti-Asian racism. It's incredibly important. Councilmember Vang, you're a hero. Great job. I can't wait to vote yes. I want to thank the callers who called in to support you. How notable that some of them in their positioning and their roles in your life, including a former opponent, calling to support you in your work. So let's focus on that. Okay, Councilmember Vang? Because it is the good and the unity and the love that will lift us above the hate. And we know the hate is there. That's why we're doing the resolution. Good work, Councilmember Vang.
Thank you. Councilmember Valenzuela.
Yes, thank you. I'm really proud to be here to support this resolution. And I have to say, this is just one part of what Councilmember Vang has been doing. I have been watching her have this discussion. She's been having this courageous discussion. She has been taking the arrows, in the word of my colleagues, for months, for years on this subject. And it breaks my heart to see what she's having to go through. But I am so proud of the work that she has done. And this resolution and the way she has stepped up in this moment is just the most recent and public example of what I know is unending work within the community to have these tough conversations and to do what she can to support. And I just commend her for all of that and want to make sure that she knows that we see all of that and that this resolution is just one of those moments. And I'm proud to be here to support you for that, Council Member. It breaks my heart to get emails from constituents who are scared to walk through our neighborhoods because of their race. And we know that this isn't who Sacramento is. And the work that we have ahead of us is daunting. And what our former president unearthed was what was always there and what has persisted beyond him leaving. And I think there's so much that we can do to really lead on this issue. And I know that we'll do it with colleagues like Councilmember Vang helping guide us along this way. So thank you again, Councilmember, for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Jennings and Councilmember Guerra.
Mayor, I think Councilmember Jennings is having a computer issue.
Okay,
Oh,
I think
There you go.
I think I'm back. You guys were all frozen for a minute, but it's good now. I think one of the callers said it best, and many of the callers said what I'd like to say, which is, I'm going to repeat it, that we as a community, we as a city can have no tolerance for hate crimes, for targeting those of Asian descent, targeting those of any group, the hatred, the bias, the racism. We can have no tolerance at all for that. And while this resolution may be a piece of paper, it is a piece of paper that tells our intent of our mission and our vision. And it does that very clearly as to what we stand for as a council and as a city. It's up to us and our community to carry out the work and the action, to develop the strategic action plan, and to invest in the long-term initiatives that will alter the course that we're seeing right now. And I am confident that we will do that. So Councilmember Vang, thank you for allowing me to be a part of the press conference. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of voting on this resolution. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of making change in Sacramento. My commitment to you is when you call, I'll be there. Thank you.
That could be a song, by the way.
It is a song too.
Councilmember Guerra and then Councilmember Laloe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Vang, thank you again for this leadership here. I want to make sure Councilmember Sneer can vote on this item. I just wanted to thank you for coming and reaching out to me and the family that lives in my district, and for showing your compassion for the family. And I think that letting them know that they are not alone, and that we all as a united community, a united Sacramento, can push back against this and not end it there, to continue on. And for also your willingness to say that we want to continue moving on the racial equity initiative, because it's not it isn't just about this resolution. It's about every step we take forward. So thank you, Councilmember Vang, and proud to support. And again, thank you for your support of the family in my community.
Thank you. Thank you all. Mayor, can I say a few words really quick? I'm just going to jump right in. First, I want to thank all the callers for calling in solidarity to support this anti-Asian hate resolution. Thank you so much to my colleagues for standing alongside the Asian American community, and that you understand the harm and trauma that has been in our community. Before we vote on the resolution tonight, I did have just some follow-up questions for the city manager, in particular because the community has been asking me specific questions around hate crime incident, and wanted to get just some clarity on the record. Currently, Howard, how are hate incidents being reported and tracked in the city of Sacramento?
Councilmember Vang, I have Chief Daniel Hahn on the line along with his team in preparation for some of these questions that are coming up. I'm going to turn it over to Daniel or Chief Hahn.
Thank you. Councilmember Vang and clearly this council, thank you for doing this resolution and speaking out against hate crime. We should all be speaking out at all times about hate crime and bias incidents, because not only are they crime against the intended victims, but now and historically, hate crimes and bias incidents, their purpose is really to cause fear, not only in the specific victim that they're targeting, but it's also meant to cause fear throughout the entire community. So we should all be at all times speaking out against these. And I want to add, before I answer the specific question, Councilmember Vang, to just let people know in another forum here at the council meeting that we will be doing a couple of community events to speak to all these questions that I'm sure you have. And one is this Friday at Odo's from 10 to 2. We will have officers there to answer questions and hand out literature in multiple languages. We'll have bilingual officers there also. And then on Saturday, this Saturday from 10 to 2 at VinFat Market on Stockton Boulevard. We were at ARI last Friday handing out flyers, and we'll be there on Monday at a vaccination clinic. And we've worked with ARI, Frank Louis on Stockton Boulevard Partnership, many of the council members on here. We were also working on other events in other parts of the city. For example, Councilmember Laloli, one in the north area that is not firmed up yet, but will be coming soon. So the hate crimes and bias incidents are reported in the same way that all other things are reported to the police department. Many people will call either the emergency line or the non-emergency line, and then also people report it often online. And they're all reviewed, they're all looked at. Now, not all incidents become crimes. So for example, there's a lot more bias or hate related incidents reported than actually become crime. I think earlier, Councilmember Vang, you brought up the incident at Grant High School. Now that, as far as I know, that wasn't reported to us. They have their own police department, their own mechanisms of reporting that. But if it was reported to us, there's a good chance that that isn't a crime, even though it might be a bias or hate related incident. So a hate crime is reported to the Department of Justice. A hate incident is either goes unreported, as some crimes go unreported also, or it's reported as an incident and it never actually becomes a crime. The hate or bias related incidents are on our website. We post them quarterly. So if you go to the police department's website, click on the crime tab and scroll to the section on bias incidents, you can see all the bias incidents that were reported by quarter over the last couple of years. There's also a short narrative of what the actual circumstances were. So anybody can go on there and look at what has been reported. For example, last year, a year of a lot of divisiveness, you might expect that hate crimes would go up, and they did. They went up fairly significantly. In regards to incidents, not necessarily crimes, there was over 60 hate or bias related incidents reported to the police department. I want to kind of just real quickly go over what groups were the highest number of incidents. So there were 17 incidents directed at the African American community. There was 12 incidents directed at the LGBTQ community. There was 9 incidents directed towards multi-race groups, and then 8 incidents that were reported in the Asian community. Those were the top. There's many other groups, but those were the top groups that were all higher than they were the year before. And if I could, I know you have a couple other questions, Councilmember Vang, but I'd like to turn it over for a couple seconds to Lieutenant Bryce Heinlein to answer how they actually get investigated.
Chief Hahn, before we do that, I know Councilmember Chenier said he had to step out at 3, and I want to make sure everyone's vote is reflected here. And so without objection, I'm going to take a motion from Councilmember Vang on the resolution. A second from who?
A second.
A second. And then I'm going to just open the roll just for Councilmember Chenier. Okay, please call his name without objection.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Chenier?
Aye. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on now. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. So Lieutenant Bryce Heinlein is our lieutenant in investigations. He will speak real quick on how things go from an incident to an actual crime, and those are all reported to the Department of Justice. So with that, Lieutenant Heinlein.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Just to go in a little bit more detail on how the reporting is handled at the police department is like the Chief originally stated, when a call is generated, it can be generated by a victim, a concerned citizen, a family member, a neighbor, and even an officer who actually observes such incidents. And they can be reported online or through our communication center. Each crime or call that comes into our dispatch center, a sergeant or a supervisor or a watch commander, whoever's in charge of that watch, is notified of that incident. And then it is that way the station commander can reach out, notify community leaders, and then also make notifications to our criminal intel unit. When a crime is not, if a crime cannot be investigated to the fullest extent at the patrol level, it comes to the investigations division. And at that point, the case or the incident is reviewed by a sergeant within our felony assaults unit. And that is the unit that handles these sort of crimes. They also liaison with other investigative units, depending on if it's a crime or if it's an incident. For example, if there is hate graffiti on a garage door or a business, then that is handled by a investigative unit that deals with property related crimes. Assaults, that sort, are handled by our felony assaults detectives, who are some of our more seasoned detectives that have experience in homicide investigations and other high profile incidents. And like the chief said, there's this disparity between hate incidents and hate crimes that is always being weighed and looked at by the supervisor to see if an actual crime has occurred that can be followed up, or is this a trend that we're seeing? These things always come into play with our detectives on what is going to be actively investigated as a crime. We have a criminal intel unit that does some of the more high profile. They may look at trends. They also look at organized groups and keep track and intelligence on that kind of information of hate groups that may be, for example, putting out pamphlets in our communities. So we have a couple different mechanisms for investigating these crimes and 2 different units within investigations. So I know that's just touching on some of it, but I hope that helps and a little understanding on how we investigate the crimes here. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Hahn, and thank you so much for that. I think definitely I just wanted to get some clarity in terms of how hate crime and hate incidents currently being reported in the city in the city of Sacramento. And if I'm understanding correctly, Chief Hahn, is that even a hate incident may not elevate to a hate crime, or if for example, I think you just shared that briefly, that regarding like bullying, insult, or microaggression, these things don't elevate. But sometimes we do, or if folks do report it, then we're able to track it, correct?
Yeah, when they're reported to us, they'll be listed on that on our website. But we want people to call us no matter what. So we want to look into each one to determine whether it's an actual crime or just, a lot of them are despicable and racist, but they don't rise to the level of a crime. But let us figure that out. So I don't want people to be on the street trying to figure out whether this is a crime or not. If somebody does something, they need to report it so we can do that investigation and determine whether it's legally a crime.
Thank you, Chief. I just wanted to just do a quick follow-up based on my conversations also with community members on the ground. Chief Hahn, I appreciate you sharing the data that SAC PD does have, but I think you and I both also know that just because it's not reported doesn't mean it's happening in the community as well. And I know that in the Asian American Pacific Islander community, there's definitely also a mistrust in government and PD as well. And I know that we have to do better in building trust as a city with our community so that we are better at tracking what's happening on the ground, that we're able to really see the trends and look for patterns to prevent this from happening. Something that I did want to do in terms of a direction, I know that the city of Sacramento recently created the Department of Community Response. And at this moment, I like to just direct the city manager to work with our team to look at expanding the scope of work for this new department for the near future. I think it's incredibly important that as a city we track, and I think it's great that there is a mechanism, but I also know what we currently have in place may not be working for community members now, and I want to make sure that we explore those options and that we begin to create trust. And if that's through the Department of Community Response, I'd like for the city manager to explore if that's a possibility as well.
Absolutely. As we discussed, Councilmember Vang, we could talk offline here with Bridget Dean, who's our director and police chief, and figure out what's a path forward where we could create more resources to track these things.
Okay. Are you ready, Councilmember Vang? Last word before we take the vote?
Nope, I think that's it. I'm incredibly grateful to all the community partners on the ground, my colleagues. I hope that we will pass this unanimously. Again, I know this is just the first step. We have a lot of work ahead to truly make sure that Sacramento is really a city that leaves no one behind. So thank you so much. And with that, Mayor, go ahead and take roll call for the vote.
Thank you very much. This will be a great roll call. And remember, Councilmember Chenier is already recorded as an aye vote. Please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Ashby,
Yes.
Councilmember Laloe,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Valenzuela,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chenier has already voted yes. Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Councilmember Vang,
Yes.
and Mayor Steinberg.
Yes, unanimous. Thank you again very, very much, Councilmember Vang. Let us move now to the second discussion item. The way that this is going to proceed here is that the city manager, Office of Emergency Service Director Daniel Bowers, are going to make presentations in one form. I know that Bridget Dean is also going to report on the efficacy of our warming centers. And then I'm going to describe and introduce a resolution, which was part of the agenda as well. And then we'll hear from the public, and then the council can take it from there. All right? Let me turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a reminder, this is a follow-up item to an action the council took in January, declaring a local emergency for extreme weather conditions. And what we committed to doing is coming back with a little bit of analysis and research to see what other agencies within the counties in Northern California and across the state really are doing when it comes to severe weather guidance that's different than what the county has adopted. So I've asked our Director of Emergency Services, Daniel Bowers, to do just that, talk a little bit about some of the findings he has. Then we're going to turn it over to Bridget Dean to look at the last 5 or 6 weeks with the activation of our warming centers, talk a little bit about the attendance at these centers along with costs, and then turn it back over to the mayor to have a discussion about his resolution. But what I'm hoping to get out of this is some guidance on which path we're going to take forward by the end of the night. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Daniel.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Daniel Bowers. As mentioned, I am your Director of Emergency Management for the City of Sacramento. I'll be covering a background of the severe weather guidance and how it integrates with our operational area. So just some background of the severe weather guidance that we have established here across the County of Sacramento is State law requires all jurisdictions within the state of California to adopt and adhere to SIMS. It's Standardized Emergency Management System, and you'll commonly hear that acronym SIMS. The city of Sacramento passed a resolution in 1995 adopting that, and then provided an updated resolution back in 2011. And then we've also signed a couple memorandums of agreement that binds us across the county as part of the operational area. And the severe weather guidance that we've been following since 2012 when it was established is an annex of the operational area plan. And in essence, SIMS is a method and a system that allows us to plan together and respond together during major emergencies and all hazards. So who established the severe weather guidance? Was led by our county OES, my counterparts at the county level. They brought together subject matter experts, and it was based on health and science. And stakeholders included, but not limited to, county public health, health and human services, National Weather Service meteorologists, and then all cities within the county had representation there as well. And then we also, just like we do with most planning processes, we engage the community. And some of those community partners that were included were Loaves and Fishes and Union Gospel. And so when we speak about extreme weather and the definitions that go along with it, we really get those from the National Weather Service. They are across the country our subject matter experts on defining extreme weather conditions. And extreme weather are conditions that potentially have a life-threatening impact on the population, animals, and agriculture. Really, when we encounter extreme weather events here in Sacramento, a lot of times it's rain accompanied by high winds. That's really what's doing the most damage. And so we have a whole community approach to that. And so I know as of recent, it's somewhat been synonymous with sheltering homeless, but that is not just what severe weather response is. It is a whole community approach to protect, again, our human population, but also our agriculture and livestock as well. And so some of those thresholds, again, based by health and science and determined by subject matter experts, local to this climate is a heat index of over 105 with credible weather forecast by the National Weather Service of excessive hot weather for more than 3 days. And that's also accompanied by nighttime lows of 75 or more. The reason that nighttime temp is in there as well, because the body needs time to cool down and the core temperature to be reduced if the heat index is that 105 or greater. And then the cold weather thresholds, extreme cold or freeze warnings or wind chill warnings by the National Weather Service that can endanger human life with credible weather forecasts of extremely cold or freezing weather for more than 3 days, with the low daytime temps accompanied by night temps of 32 degrees or less. So again, just a key note there is with the heat threshold is the heat index that also incorporates humidity into the temperature. And then also back to the cold, it is temperature dependent with the 32 degrees or less at night. But as you can see from both of those, it also incorporates the National Weather Service weather alerts. And so within our severe weather guidance, the issuance of a forecast of severe weather, which is determined by the National Weather Service, will be the key indicator regarding the event type. And within the public health division at the county level, the public health officer, along with the director of the Office of Emergency Services for the county, with my counterpart at the county level, or their designee, will determine the need to implement this guidance. And so again, this is severe weather guidance annex as part of the operational area plan. We are committed through an agreement and adherence to SIMS to comply with the county. But I will pause here just to state a couple examples of how we've diverged on our own, most recently with the severe weather caused by the wildfire smoke. Anytime we approach an emergency response, at least in my professional history, I've always worked with stakeholders. I've always worked with mutual aid partners to provide the best service to the community. However, in the absence of a plan, we initially tried to bring together those stakeholders and provide the service to the community. A few years ago, if you can remember, we did have some wildfire smoke and there was not a plan. And so we executed and we went forward as a city and we provided relief to the community. We've provided hundreds of thousands of N95 masks out to folks to provide particulate protection from the wildfire smoke. We canceled a lot of our special events, Veterans Day Parade and so forth as well, and provided thousands of N95s to provide and offer respite to the homeless. This past summer, we took it one step further and we opened cleaner air centers. It was really the first time in the state of California where cleaner air centers were activated. We also have, over the past couple of years since that large fire, worked with stakeholders, including county public health, the Air Quality Management District, to come up with thresholds for severe weather related to wildfire smoke. Again, that is a first. And we will look to incorporate that into our next update of the Severe Weather Guidance Annex. But when there is a plan and a unified plan, it is best to work together. And most recently, this past summer as well, we didn't quite meet the thresholds for some severe weather due to heat. However, at the recommendation of the public health director, and if you can remember, Dr. Bielenson made the recommendation to activate cooling centers, despite not quite meeting the threshold. And we immediately responded and we activated several across the city. And the mayor was there. I remember when we activated the Hagenwood Community Center together and got the word out to the public. So again, that was working in collaboration and partnership. While we didn't quite meet the thresholds there, the public health officials, the expert that we rely on, the recommendation for, recommended that we open these cooling centers, and we did so immediately. So I just wanted to also offer a comparison to some of our other regional partners and then some of them down in Southern California about how their severe weather response compares to Sacramento. And so you can see, starting off with Yolo County, San Joaquin County, Sutter County, Yuba County, several of the counties that are either close proximity or border us directly, how they measure up, and they pretty much have the exact same activation thresholds. I will state that some of them also have an additional wind component that ours does not have currently, but I believe we'll be adding it during the next update. But they are all inclusive of National Weather Service and public health recommendations, and they all comply and adhere to SIMS, which again, the standardized emergency management system that is state law requirement across the state. The only divergence you'll see down there is down to our southern partners, City of Los Angeles. Their heat index only requires 2 days of 105 or greater, where up here, we are looking at 3 days. But that concludes the brief, and on to the most important parts of it are your questions, unless the city manager would like to roll right into Bridget Dean's brief on the warming center updates.
No, Daniel, let's pause here and take some questions if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor. Again, the intent of this was just to bring about the history of how we got to the current severe weather guidance, fully appreciating and understanding the council wants to branch off on its own to develop its own. So following tonight, if it's the council's desire, I want to get together with 4 of the council members here to work as a working group to develop what our guidance will look like going forward. That's different than what the county severe weather guidance looks like. Because
I think, depending upon,
right,
of course, the vote on my resolution, that may decide the issue here.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. So I'm happy to open this up to any questions at this point. It's fairly self-explanatory through the history. I appreciate it. Are there any questions now from members, or can we?
Or we could roll right into Bridget's presentation about the stats from the warming center over the last 5 or 6 weeks here.
All right, before you go there, I do have questions.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So, we, in a very reactive way, opened warming centers in response to a storm that had very strong winds, which are not the norm in our storm pattern here in Sacramento Valley, but do occur on occasion. And it was a particularly violent storm, 70-mile-an-hour winds. It was a difficult night to get through, no doubt. Currently, it's hailing at my house and hailing quite hard. If we are going to look at a different way forward, we probably should look at the criteria by which we manage this. I mean, this situation right now, for one thing, our warming center isn't open because it's not the time. It's not 6 o'clock yet. Another situation is there's no provision in this particularly about precipitation and wind or unusual events like hail, which we get not often in Sacramento Valley, but it does happen from year to year because of thunderstorms. So I would suggest that we do look at those types of weather events because they can constitute an emergent response. It's not difficult. I mean, it's not easy to stay outdoors in a hailstorm. They don't last very long generally. In fact, this one's tailing off right now. But, the point I'm trying to make is that we should consider more criteria than simply temperature or air quality. That's my feeling at this point.
I agree, Councilmember Harrison. Should we go down this road? That's why I want to work with a subset of this council, a working group, to develop what that looks like. Should we go down this road?
Once again, if the council rejects my resolution, then that'll be appropriate to develop new guidance. If the council approves the resolution, that will be the position of the city council. Now there'll be implementation, but what I'm calling for is an elimination of the temperature criteria, period, in the city. I want to get to that after and explain my resolution, of course. I don't want to get ahead, but I just want to put it some into context here. Let's hear from Bridget Dean, please.
Oh, Mayor, I had a quick question if that's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think the severe weather guidance was always for like occasional openings, but I'm curious, Daniel, in your review of what other cities have done, because Sacramento County, for example, used to have something called Winter Sanctuary, where we just had sites that opened every night during the winter months. And so extreme weather guidance was really only needed for that kind of triage for maybe remaining folks that were outside. So in the cities you looked at, how many of them had some sort of model of programming available to folks either year round or that was seasonal like the Winter Sanctuary was?
Council member, that's an excellent question. And that is a key distinction to make here. And without stepping on Bridget Dean's toes, I do want to say that the severe weather response is separate, like you stated and accurately stated, than the homeless services response. And all of those cities across the board, almost to a T, had some homeless services that were not contingent on the severe weather, and they provide those opportunities. And now I have seen some situations where they transcend a little bit. For example, some of the homeless shelters will expand some of their occupancy during severe weather. So a little bit of a nest and a tie-in there. Other places will just keep those entirely separate. But that is a key distinction. And just to note, these emergency warming and cooling centers, they are no barrier. These are for life-threatening circumstances where it is, doors are open, get in and out of the golf ball size hail or severe winds that are blown over trees, open the doors and get folks in and save life. And the same goes for agriculture and our livestock out there as well. It trips and triggers that mutual aid network across the operational area and state to work together to respond to that severe emergency. Whereas during a day-to-day event, a lot of these homeless shelters, they have barriers to get in. There is a process for getting admitted. They do have some clients that might have been removed previously that are not allowed back. Whereas again, these severe weather cooling and warming centers, we're just focused on protecting life. And so we are letting anybody in. And the hazards that come along with that and some of the concerns is you could potentially have children sitting next to somebody who might have a legal history that would prevent that in a normal occasion. We want to work to separate that. But that's also why generally law enforcement is also present at these emergency centers, and we have those parameters in place to help and save life, but also do it correctly. And as you mentioned, for a very short-term, high-hazard environment.
And you may not have the answer to this question, and that's okay, but I'm curious, we've been operating under severe weather guidance. If we have data on how many folks have died due to weather-related conditions, as we've been implementing that guidance on nights when we weren't opening warming centers or cooling centers for folks.
So I do not have
I'm
that
talking
data.
about how many folks have died. Sorry, that's kind of a weirdly framed question. Let me reframe it. So I'm curious, outside of the nights when we had something open because it triggered severe weather guidance, do we have any idea how many folks have died on those other nights? Thinking to, for example, John Lane, who died a couple weekends ago at Cesar Chavez Park. Any data on that whatsoever that you're aware of?
No, it's a great question. And from what I've understanding, the information that I've sought is Nobody has died related to storm or temperature here in the city. That's from what I've heard and what has been conveyed to me. I do not have the statistics of the percentage or numbers of folks who have died throughout the year, and if that differentiates over the last month and a half since we've had the warming center open. I don't have that.
Councilmember Valenzuela, I think Bridget may have some more up-to-date information on that as part of her presentation.
Okay, let us move. Can we, Councilmember Valenzuela, because then we're going to get to the meat of this. We are part of the meat. We're going to get to the rest of the meat in a moment. Let's hear from Bridget Dean, if we can. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. I just have a couple quick slides to give you an overview of the warming centers the last about 6 weeks that we've been running. And Councilmember Valenzuela, there have been 10 homeless associated deaths since the warming center was open countywide. But prior to that, I have not pulled that information. So if that's something that you would like, we can work to get that for you.
Maybe you can launch into your, there you go. Thanks, Bridget.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I always, I teach and I should be a lot better at this than I typically am, right? So just very quickly, I just want to give you a couple updates on numbers. Maybe. Oh, there they are. All right. So overall, just so you know, on January 26th, 2021, we opened our first warming center, emergency warming center in response to the storm. That was at the Galleria Library downtown. That is still currently open, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but just FYI that is one site that we opened on 1/26 and is currently open. We, on the 29th of January, opened Southside Pool. That was an additional location here in the city. We were using regional transit to assist people from getting to the library to the Southside Pool at the time. And that was closed on February 17th. The city parking garage was initially opened as well on the 29th of January for safe parking. And due to a closure of Galleria Library for 10 days, we ended up opening up pedestrian access to the parking garage on February 18th. And we have also now kept that open. And then on February 23rd, the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Lemon Hill was opened for warming, and that is still as well currently open. All of these centers run about 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. the following morning. And I think that was already mentioned that they're not available right now. And that is one of the key spaces to a respite warming center, is not necessarily 24/7. So I just wanted to share numbers overall, and I will send this to all of you council members. The library has been open for a total of 32 days. As I said, we closed 10 days due to positive tests there related to COVID. We did do the closure based on public health order direction. However, overall during those 32 days, 1,891 individuals, guests and visits, some duplicate, have used that space for a warming purpose, which averages about 59 daily. Southside Pool, as I stated earlier, about 18 days open, 26 days total open, but 141 total there with 7 average, a smaller space. The parking garage for safe parking has been open consistently since January 29th, and that has resulted in 131 visits. Again, repeat duplicate individuals, but that averages about 5 vehicles a day. The pedestrian use of the garage, which was opened on February 18th and is still open, has 230 individuals who have used services and visits, and that averages to about 12. And then Lemon Hill Church, which was opened on February 23rd and is still currently open, has had a total of 58 visitors, and that has averaged about 4. So we've had 5 locations at one point open. We are currently operating 3 of those. And we are seeing an average of about 87 individuals a day using all sites combined. And then I did want to touch base on what we are currently doing from a cost point. First Step Communities, as of February 11th, began running our locations for us here in the city. And they were given a contract which included 3 sites, non-city staffing, and operational costs, except for the cost of lease or use costs of the buildings. And this includes security, restrooms, et cetera, that they provide. And you can see that total amount there at 396,653. And using a projection model, which we can share with you at a later date or after the meeting if you opt, we projected a 1-year cost if we were to do a more extensive respite triage center or locations like safe parking or safe grounds that would be more available 24/7. So it wasn't an overnight or warming center model, that we would reach a cost of about $3 million a year, which would include multiple locations, full services provided, non-city staffing. So we would work with our community entities to support. And then that would also account for operational costs, excluding lease or use costs for property or other if we had to pay for that for rent purposes. So Mayor, that's the bit of information I have to share with you.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Howard, anything before I
will just add on to that last piece there. We are in the process of working with the state and potentially the county for some sites that may or may not require costs associated with the use of parcels. That's why it's a little bit squishy right now. We don't have a lot of certainty to it, but as we get closer to it, we will put some more meat on the bones.
Very good. Well, thank you for an excellent overall presentation. The history is very important. What we've done over the last 5 weeks is important.
Mayor, can I ask Bridget Dean? I'm so sorry. Just one question about that last chart.
Sure.
Just a quick question on her presentation. Bridget, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
On those sites that you put up, then they had some average numbers and things. Do the costs, is there cost variance based on how many people are being served? Obviously, some of them were really small, like the parking garage is very inexpensive, I know, because we just have the bathroom. But like the ones that are warming centers, like South Side is obviously smaller. I saw Lemon Hill had a small number of guests, but obviously the downtown sites like the Galleria have much larger daily
Right.
averages. Do they cost the same amount, or is there savings on that? I'd like to understand that piece a little bit better.
So in relation to those three, as you know, with the emergency declaration, we were moving quickly to get sites open and available. So the costs are based on the site need. So for instance, Lemon Hill's a good example where security is available. We had to place porta potties and some other entities, as well as buy blankets, et cetera, just for the population that we were serving in that particular area. The warming center that is located in the library, obviously that's a building that we have access to. However, we still have to pay custodial costs and some of those other things to keep that clean. So I would say that the goal of that funding for the current time was to ensure that we could get at least 3 sites or more up and running. Now, if we can get 3 or more up and running with that amount through the 31st, then it won't go beyond that amount currently. So it'll be fluctuating with what the need is. So there could potentially be a savings at the end.
Mayor Pro Tem Ashby, I'll add that I think what you're asking is there's a kind of a threshold cost that we have to incur for standing up any site. And to the extent we can have more use at a particular site, the cost per person served goes down dramatically.
Yeah, that's really my question, Howard, because if the site in District 4 is obviously saving us more, or we're getting more bang for our buck because there are so many more people. So if the site in District 6 is costing us that amount, but it's not being heavily utilized, then maybe we would be better off to spend that money in a different location where we would get more bang for our buck. I guess that's what I want to know the scales on that so that we're making sure we're using the money in the right and best way to serve the most people. That's it. Thanks, Mayor.
Yes.
I really appreciate
I
that.
apologize, Councilmember Ashby. Yes, so a larger site would obviously be more cost effective and be able to serve more. It is a cost to run sites that are getting 1 to 4 people on average.
Well, and that's also, and I'll turn it over to you, Mayor, sorry. This is where we're working with Councilmember Valenzuela to acquire large parcels where we could serve more people and have concentrated services, and we get the economies of scale. So that's more cost efficient.
Very good. That's important clarification. It does lead into my resolution here. And again, I want to be clear because some members have questioned, how is the agenda set at the City Council? Under the charter, the city manager has the right to send set agenda items, so does the mayor. And Howard and I work very well together, as you know. But sometimes we, we have different roles here. And so we work great together. We communicated, and I said, I want to bring forward this resolution in part because I want more than just a discussion where that sometimes can lead to the city manager and his team going back and trying to parse the tape and listen to what people said and try to amalgamate the opinions of 9 people. And there can be ambiguity. A resolution is the clearest way to state the council's direction. And as mayor, I want to make sure that I give us that opportunity on your behalf, on the city management's behalf, and on the community's behalf. So I want to do just a high-level overview of this resolution. And it's consistent really with the opinion piece that I wrote that was published in the Sacramento Bee on Sunday. The resolution states much of what we already know, that the last point in time count said 5,570 individuals who were unsheltered. We know that number is undoubtedly larger now, especially during COVID. The resolution recites the history that Daniel Bowers and Howard and Bridget just went through in terms of what we have done together over the last 5 weeks since the terrible storm at the end of January. I'm not going to get to the rationale because I'm going to save that for a moment, but just to tell you what the resolution itself does. It says, and really begins section 4, the relevant portion, the city council directs the city manager to remove the temperature-related criteria to provide warming shelters and instead adopt a citywide policy that overnight respite will be provided in triage centers. That's what I call them, triage centers, dispersed throughout the city. Section 5, the city council directs the city manager to include the triage centers in the work program for the Department of Community Response and Office of Emergency Management, and to aggressively pursue a network of walk-in triage centers in underutilized public and privately enclosed spaces and safe parking lots throughout the city where people currently experiencing homelessness are living outdoors. Finally, section 6, the city council directs the city manager to identify and allocate funding sources for the triage centers and report back to the city council for the remainder of 2021 and for inclusion in the FY 2021-22 budget, the resources needed to implement this robust program. And so I think Daniel Bowers really said it well. And first of all, I want to say, I think we are blessed in the city to have a great emergency services department, Mr. Bowers. You're a great professional. And the way you have responded and your team has responded over the last 5 weeks has been exemplary. And the same thing with the city manager and your team, kind of against great odds, incredible amount of stress and work. You stood up, shelter sufficient to provide 2,451 room nights for real human beings. That's something to applaud. And so I thank you for all that you do, but you said something interesting, sir. And I paraphrase, you said that the homeless services response in the city is different from the emergency services response in the city. And I submit to all of you that in fact is the problem. That we don't see as a matter of policy that emergency services includes this dire emergency that we, our residents, and thousands of unsheltered people are experiencing every single day. And this resolution aims to change that, not just for limited periods of time, but for evermore, for the foreseeable future until we make this problem better. Today's action could be a turning point for our city. And I believe this resolution, as I wrote on Sunday, may seem like a small piece of the puzzle as we are contemplating a master plan for longer term housing and longer term shelter and longer term services. But I believe that this resolution is a statement of our larger intent. The problem, of course, is complex, but the question before us as a city is simple. Are we committed to finding safe space, preferably safe space with roofs, for thousands of unsheltered people residing under our freeways, in the river district, and our business corridors, especially downtown, but everywhere throughout our city, for individuals, but also for families, for women and children? If the answer to that question is yes, then we can set a path that leads us, actually a glide path in a way, into the development of our master plan. If the answer is no, and we say it's not part of our core mission to build capacity to try to bring thousands of people indoors, then what are we saying? I think we'd be saying that we really can't provide the kind of relief that the people deserve. And so I think there are 4 compelling reasons why this resolution is so important. Number one, our community demands it, and rightfully demands it. They want to see some relief from these endless tent encampments, not just because it is a blight, because they also have good hearts and they worry about the people who are living in such squalid condition. Number 2, everyone matters. And I know that, and you know that, but it's really interesting. We spend a lot of time now, and I'm very proud of this at our city council, talking about racial equity and gender equity and LGBTQ equity. Do you know, if we had that tool in place now and we applied it to this resolution tonight, there would be no way that anyone could vote anything but yes. Because here's what we know, and the numbers have changed, of course. Look at the African-American population in the year of the death of and the killing of George Floyd. The African-American population is about 14% of our county's population. The last point in time count in 2019, African-Americans represented 31% of the unsheltered population. That isn't a form of racism in terms of enabling and allowing, we're not solely responsible, of course, but just as a society of not doing everything we can to bring more people indoors, we enable that result. Number 3, and this is one of the great misconceptions about this issue, roofs and/or safe space, because I know we're also talking about the potential of camping, at least temporarily. I hope with tiny homes, by the way, as opposed to tents, but I'm flexible. I'm flexible. But roofs and safe spaces are a beginning, not an end. There are those who say, I hear it all the time. One of our colleagues in very good faith said it last week, but I hear it in the community all the time. This is a mental health and a substance abuse problem. And yes, it is in many respects, especially for many, many people. But we cannot provide mental health and substance abuse treatment and care for people who are living under a bridge or under the freeway or living in squalor. We can't get to them. And that's why we have our Office of Community Response, but they're going to need, Bridget Dean is going to have 85 people as part of her operation, contract and/or inside, some combination. Those people are going to need some place to take the people they outreach to. I think about our master plan here again. The council's really engaged in this in such a positive way. That's to identify long-term shelter, to identify spaces, to identify supportive housing, to identify services and treatment options for people, to identify hopefully a citywide and or a countywide campus for people who are the most, who have the most severe needs. If we aren't committed to just bringing as many people indoors now as possible, how do we triage people to those longer term facilities? The term triage is intentional here. The warming center was an emergency response for weather. Today, I'm calling for a longer, for defining emergency as year-round and saying, let's use every public and private space we can to bring people indoors. Let's use large acreage where it's appropriate for people to camp, not in the middle of business corridors, in the middle of residential neighborhoods. And let's use all those places to triage people into ending their homelessness. And finally, from the business perspective, which I know sometimes doesn't get voiced as much as it should, I believe, and I may disagree, some may disagree with me, I don't know, people should not be able to camp anywhere they want. I agree with that. I agree. I go a step farther and say, I don't believe living on the streets in any form is a civil right. But we have neither the moral nor the legal high ground to call that question, frankly. And the legal high ground we definitely don't have because of Martin v. Boise. What did that case say? It said, city, you cannot even move tent encampments unless you demonstrate that you have the capacity to provide safe alternatives for people. And those two get disconnected all the time. And we must connect them. I hear it from our business friends all the time. Clean it up. We can only clean it up in the way I think you want if we are providing safe, dignified alternatives for people. Again, preferably roofs, but at least acreage where people can camp safely with the kinds of help and services that they need. I wrote in my piece, and I'll end it with this. It's never the wrong time, it's never the wrong temperature to bring people indoors. We shouldn't be basing this criteria on temperature. What are we saying? That it's okay for people to live outside in squalor when it's 40 degrees, but not 32? What? I understand how this arose, and the positive acts that we have done have been charitable, but it's not enough. And so I'd ask for your aye vote on this resolution today, and happily open it up to my colleagues. How much public testimony do we have, Madam Clerk?
I have 12 callers on the line.
So members, up to you. Do you want to hear from the public here first, now that I've presented, laid it out? Why don't we do that? And then I'll turn it over to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. First caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hi, my name is Mo Kashmiri. I live in Southside Park. I wanted to congratulate the council and ask them to move forward and support this item. I think removing the severe weather requirements to open shelters is the right thing to do. We need open year-round triage shelters. This is a huge step. I'm really proud of our city. I'm usually a skeptical critic, and I think this is a huge movement. I know we've got a long way to go and that this is a marathon, not a sprint, but this is solid movement and just what we need. Near my house, there's an unhoused guy who sleeps outside. And I remember walking over to see him after that big storm, and I remember him just covered and trying to keep warm with something over his head and just shivering in blankets. And it was just ridiculous. And I know as a city we're better than that, and we're better than that as a city. And I think for all, I think addressing this issue is going to critically help us make our community better and make us a community that I'm proud to live in. So thank you, and appreciate, want to voice support for this item. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Andy Hernandez. I'm a resident of the Woodlake neighborhood in District 2. I'm calling you today to urge you to support the proposal outlined in item 3 of today's council agenda. I want to clarify that our primary focus should still be on getting the master plan designed and executed, but this proposal allows us to provide shelter right now, today, while we take the time to get the master plan. The city has learned a lot from the 3, soon to be 4 congregate shelters you've opened in the last 3 years. And I'd like you to take a moment to let that sink in. This council, under the leadership of the mayor, will have opened 4 congregate shelters in Sacramento in 3 years' time when X Street opens later this year. That's an accomplishment we should all be very proud of. It shows that it can be done, but it took massive financial commitment, lots of planning, and ironing out countless details to make them successful. We've learned a lot, but we also have a lot. We've learned that we have a lot more to learn, and these things always take more time and money to implement than we would like them to. As you navigate the process of building the master plan, the city will undoubtedly be knee-deep in details. How many congregate beds are needed versus tiny home beds? What services needed to be included with safe car camping? Where do all these go? How do we convince neighbors to not be afraid? Where do we find the funding we need? All the usual questions, you know them well. But as we work through these details, you can provide a solution, albeit not perfect right now today, rather than always being in the position of a solution being on the horizon. I urge you to provide the funding and direction, but also to follow through to make sure it actually gets implemented by staff with a reasonable amount of urgency. We will get there with the master plan. After the last 3 years, I'm even more convinced than ever. This proposal, however, gives us the ability to do something today while we work toward a better tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Adra Okoro, and I am the Policy Director for the Sacramento Housing Alliance. And we support city actions to remove temperature-related criteria to provide year-round triage centers to provide dignified housing around the city temporarily with networks for permanent supportive housing. It's essential that we have pathways to permanent supportive housing as a solution to people who are living on the streets. So what is permanent supportive housing? It is housing coupled with supportive services to help people who are chronically experiencing homelessness. This includes mental health counseling. This includes direction to primary care physicians for other health-related challenges. This includes building community and support for our residents who are living on the street. Mercy Housing and Mutual Housing, 2 of our members at Sacramento Housing Alliance, they build these kind of developments. And there are other developers in our city who do this as well. This is a significant investment, but these funds used for these developments ultimately saves wasted funds that we use in emergency services, cycling in our neighbors in and out of care. We need to invest in the valuable individuals so they can have a place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. My name is Bob Erlenbush. I'm the Executive Director of the Sacramento Regional Coalition to End Homelessness and a resident of Councilmember Jennings' district. Mayor, thank you for bringing this resolution forward. The coalition has always felt that the current weather activation criteria is random, quite frankly, and ultimately inhumane. As you pointed out, we're okay with 40 degrees, but it's got to get down to 32. But what happens if it's only for 2 days and not 3? We've got to move past that. And thank you again, Mayor, for underscoring the racial equity or inequity, in this case, dimension of the crisis of homelessness. As Mr. Bowers pointed out, it's not only temperature driven, which I hope this resolution passes to get rid of, but also air quality issues because of sadly, the continuing threat of wildfires. We hope that there's at least one of these triage centers in every district to ensure that we're addressing the crisis of homelessness equitably. And not only that, but also to make sure, as you alluded to, Mayor, that all populations are covered by this resolution. So not only single adults, but also families, parents or moms with children, but also transitional age youth. I appreciated what Bridget Dean talked about in terms of these hopefully triage centers being full service. One of the biggest barriers has been transportation, and I'm glad that's been addressed. Also to make sure that these triage centers are ADA compliant. Clearly, you've already seen the wisdom of contracting with nonprofits.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
Yes. As was mentioned by Bridget Dean, there were 10 deaths Those are 10 reasons to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. This is Kathleen Williams from District 4, and I represent the Sacramento Homeless Organizing Committee, the Poor People's Campaign, the Services Not Sweep Coalition. And I'm calling to support the resolution insofar as that it is calling for a bed for every head. These triage centers that are welcoming and provided with services can be an essential piece of the city's plan around homelessness and can be coordinated with the master plan that is ongoing. However, I want to present the city with a few cautions. The first is that there must be community engagement and engagement of the unhoused population at every stage. And I would point to the process for moving people from under the freeway due to Caltrans work, and the fact that we're going to start by interviewing people, finding out what their needs are, finding out who's in a family, who is, what their concerns, what their fears, what their needs are, and that is a starting point. So the process of the city must involve that. The second thing is that as powerful as the resolution is, unless it's followed up with specifics about where and how and who is going to be provided access to these triage centers, it will just become another piece of paper that tends to suggest to people that something is being done when actually nothing is being done. And I look at the situation that we're in now with over 5,000 people outside to say that there has been too much paper and not enough coherent.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
Yes, do not criminalize and do not turn to the police to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hi, I'm PJ from District 4. I would like to commend the city in its proposal to keep the triage centers open year-round until each and every unhoused person has a house. I primarily take issue with one part of the op-ed penned by the mayor. He states that he does not believe living on the streets is a civil right, that government should be required to provide housing, and that he will make it illegal to camp adjacent to neighborhoods and key business corridors. I get that. That is the language you need to include in order to get buy-in from business and rich constituents. How about we do the moral thing regardless of their views? Also, I take issue with your framing. If it is government's job to provide housing and it fails, you will punish the unhoused. If you've made the services comprehensive, if you've made their accessibility and ease of understanding requirements complete, then why would a failure of those systems lead to punishing of the unhoused? This doesn't need to be a formal prohibition. It could be something as simple as a city employee coming by with a card or to gather information for intake. Maybe it's just a traveler who is just camping for the night because they don't have the money for a place, but also don't need to go through the formal intake process. If the city is doing its job and people are being housed to the degree that they should be, then at most you might have a handful of people every night who are unaware of the system and thus might need that first contact to find out what options are available. But that doesn't mean we need to involve law enforcement and cite or jail them. They clearly need services and clearly were not made aware of those the city offers. So we should make them aware and get them onto what options we have available for them. And lastly, I would like to say it is hilarious to indicate that business doesn't get a say in things or is often forgotten. They literally run everything in this city, in this region, in this country, and in this world. They have outsized influence. People are more important. Without us, businesses cease to exist. People existed long before the current incarnation of businesses did, and we would survive without them. The reverse cannot be said, which is why people matter and should be our focus. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ruth Salady. I live in District 5 and I volunteer with Sac Soup. I support agenda item 11, and I urge this council to support it as well. The city must take action to bring unhoused residents indoors through temporary and permanent shelters, as well as long-term housing options. Today, I'm asking that you vote to provide year-round shelter because I experienced chronic homelessness for most of my life. This journey began at the age of 12 when I began running away from the severe abuse I endured for the first 12 years of my life. It wasn't until I gained access to stable housing that I was able to reflect on how my adverse childhood experiences had contributed to my chronic homelessness and unstable employment. Stable housing has transformed my life by allowing me to maintain employment and work on healing from my trauma. And chronic homelessness perpetuated my system's responses to that trauma, or what we call mental health problems. Shelter is not enough. I urge the city to provide sleeping bags, cots, food, water, hygiene products, and to provide access to restroom facilities. I also urge the city to provide dedicated trauma-responsive staff at all times in all facilities. Homelessness is trauma. During the COVID pandemic, it's critical that high-risk residents have voluntary access to contact tracing programs, quality PPE, and disinfection supplies. Access to regular testing and vaccination for those who desire them must be prioritized for these residents. I urge the council to adopt this resolution today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. This is Joe Smith, the Advocacy Director for Loaves and Fishes. Loaves and Fishes supports the resolution of creating day and night triage centers for people experiencing homelessness. We agree to move completely away from the weather criteria for determining whether or not a shelter or a respite center should be open. We feel it's an important step in developing a comprehensive shelter plan for our neighbors experiencing homelessness. Additionally, we agree with the statement in Section 5, which states to aggressively pursue a network of walk-in triage centers in underutilized public and privately enclosed spaces and parking lots throughout the city where people currently experiencing homelessness are living outdoors. It's crucial to use spaces near where people are located. One good example is the Kmart building on Stockton Boulevard. It's vacant, it's large, and it's just adjacent to where a number of our unhoused neighbors are already residing. And there are a lot of other places around Sacramento that would suit this kind of siting. We'd ask the time be taken while debating this resolution to discuss how families experiencing homelessness will be prioritized. Families of various configurations should remain together and intact, including pets, partners, other family members, adult-age children, or the family elders. I feel it's crucial to keep families together. We hope that the County of Sacramento and other cities in the county will step up in a big way to join Sacramento City. We look to the county to provide health, behavioral health, AOD services for our unhoused neighbors and be a major contributor. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hi, my name's Nikki, and I'm with the Sacramento Homeless Organizing Committee, but also just a friend and family member and loved one of a lot of folks that live outside. And I support this idea that there should be a place all the time, and also want to recognize that when there's not a place all the time, we can't continue in criminalization. And this overnight shelter or center, I think it's important. I think it's very important. But I know that there is just so much to be said for becoming homeless again during the day. And I know the council actually knows about this. Y'all did some workshops in the last few years and some reports, and even went so far as to fund the community-based shelters that were only running overnight because you could see how important it was that there was a place for people to be during the day and that they weren't continuously displaced overnight or every night as they went in and every morning as they came out. So just want to say I hope we're looking at, bigger picture, longer term options. I've heard a lot around that, but I know that when so much of the budget is tied up in law enforcement, it's going to be hard to find those dedicated funds. And so just want to encourage you to think big about what you can do and about what actually keeps the community safe and how much you've been spending to police these people who live outside all this time. So much money has been spent policing these folks who live outside. And if we're serious about, folks getting trauma-informed services,
Thank you for your
we have
comments.
to
Your time is
understand.
complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
Yeah, absolutely. The police have no part in that process.
Thank you for
you
your
have to rebuild.
comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Katie Maple, and I'm a resident of District 5 and co-founder of SacSoup. I'm in full support of this resolution and any measure to make shelter more readily available for the thousands of people living outside, especially low or no barrier options. As the city develops its master plan to address homelessness, it's important to keep in mind that every single day from now until June, when the plan is expected to be adopted, and every single day between then and when we actually have beds, shelter, and homes available for use, our neighbors will be outside. As I watch the hail fall outside, I must stress the urgency of the situation. People are dying, people are hungry, and people are cold. I appreciate the city bringing this issue front and center and working diligently to help those who need it most. We have the resources and the ability. Now we just need the will to move it forward. So I appreciate it, and I especially appreciate Councilmember Valenzuela, who's been at these warming centers every single night. I've seen her there, and I appreciate your work so much. I hope this passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call this afternoon. This is Richard Wake, City Council, District 5 calling. I'm in full support of the resolution. However, just wanted to make a few comments here. I'm hoping, and I'm sure this is going to be taken care of, that, we need to find a place for all the people under the WX freeway to go. We can't just have them go all over the city. And, that would be in violation of court orders that say that we can't do that. Those people need a place to go. Also, I'm still in full support of what Councilmember Harris said at a few city council meetings and what I brought up at the last meeting, that Cal Expo still also needs to be thoroughly checked out to see if we can use Cal Expo. And my last point is this. I also took into consideration what Councilmember Lowley said at the last meeting about taking businesses and residents into more consideration. And I thought about that quite a bit. And as everyone knows, we have a lot of problems everywhere in Sacramento. But, we do have problems that are exclusive to the Southland Park area, noted on Riverside Boulevard. And I've received several different emails in regards to vehicle notification systems, waiting for the master plan and this, that, and the other. If it's going to be taking a significant amount of time to get these things in place, I would respectfully submit that as Sergio, the owner of Barrios, pointed out in our meeting with Councilmember Chenier on March 1st, that the business owners and the residents of Southland Park, not speaking for a group, just making a comment the way Sergio explained it, that we do not have time or the desire to wait for, to wait a significant longer of time to get things like vehicles referred to the church on Lemon Hill.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
Yeah, we need action now. The residents and the business owners need to be given more consideration immediately.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments. Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
The city must take action to bring as many residents indoors as possible through temporary and permanent shelters, as well as long-term housing options. I support agenda item 11 to eliminate temperature-based requirements for providing shelter and housing options, and instead provide year-round opportunities for residents to shelter and to have access to services. Today, I'm asking that you vote to provide year-round shelter. However, year-round shelter and access to housing are not enough. Dedicated trauma-informed staff should be available at all times to assist residents and to help them access city and county services related to health, housing, workforce opportunities, and vital programs. The provision of shelter, services, and essential COVID-19 resources is the bare minimum that must be provided to residents who do not have access to housing. Also, as we sit in this meeting in our warm houses and homes in the dais, over 10,000 of your constituents are outside in the shelter.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Mayor, I have no more callers.
Okay, thank you very much, members of the public. Let me turn it over to my colleagues. Begin with Councilmember Harris and Valenzuela, and then Vice Mayor Chenier, and I'm sure there will be other members that will.
Thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
You know, I'd like to say that, I appreciate you bringing this forward. I think that you and I in particular, are trying to achieve the same goal, but we have different ideas about how to get there. Overnight respite has some place in our toolkit, but I find it to be one of the less effective tools in addressing homelessness. Certainly in an emergent situation, in the cold and rain and storm, providing shelter is paramount because there's real risk outdoors. But the fact of the matter is, and has been for years and will continue to be, that we cannot serve everybody on every night given the amount of money we have, and we have to pick and choose which programs that we want to fund and staff. Now, there's an elephant in the living room here, which is, and I'm going to bring it up because this particularly upsets me. There was an outbreak at our warming center, a COVID outbreak. I question whether or not the council takes seriously enough the threat of COVID and the fact that we are still in a pandemic when considering overnight respite. We had 2 of our staff members get ill, one of them gravely ill, and now her father is also ill with COVID and in the hospital. This is very problematic. The county health officer shut down the warming center because of this outbreak. This is a real risk. I agree with the mayor's plan that he brought forth in January to create a comprehensive plan, a real plan of action, a decision about where and how to put forward programs to do what Nikki said, which is to create a place all the time, which I totally agree with. But overnight respite is not the answer, and certainly not during the time of a pandemic when there is real risk in congregate shelters. I think that our staff will tell you this all day long because they are the ones working in those conditions. And I am really not content to expose people to that kind of risk. Now, can we manage them better? Yes, by giving more space and therefore, having fewer people in a congregate shelter. That's what's happening at Meadowview. That is what will happen at Alhambra and X. Mayor, you brought up many points, but overnight respite doesn't address them. In overnight respite, we're not dealing with drug and substance abuse issues, and we're not dealing with mental health issues, and we certainly aren't giving our constituents relief from tent encampments when we send people on their merry way in the morning. I watched Winter Sanctuary go on in my district for my first 3 years at council. And yes, there was some brief relief for people overnight in weather conditions, and that's a good thing. But they were returned to the River District every morning in a bus and the River District continued to suffer the impacts of the homeless population in that regard. If we're going to have meaningful success, we should do exactly what you proposed at first and create a comprehensive plan. And certainly overnight respite should be part of that comprehensive plan. But pulling the trigger right now and saying that we're going to put a huge investment into this is simply not as effective as using the motel rooms, which we do, where we don't have the COVID problem, or doing Safe Ground, which is an open air, and we can create, and there we can actually apply concentrated services. And we can have a continuing conversation with all of the homeless population to help them start to address their issues. That's where we should pivot to, in my opinion, to immediately start safe car camping and campground sites. We potentially have a site under the WX freeway. We do have delivery of the sanitation trailers that I directed to be ordered with the CRF funds. And we are set up to do this. And in that kind of a situation, we can serve more people, create more safety, more hygiene, more access to services, and condition people more quickly to be successful in a housed situation. I agree with you. A roof is very important. Just doing it outdoors long-term, that's not the answer. But it is an excellent response and short-term answer to the crisis that we're facing. Now, I think, in my opinion, overnight respite is really an emergent response, and that's how I would handle it. I would change the criteria and direct the city manager to use criteria that account for wind and wind chill and rain, hail, and other conditions like that, but use it as an emergent response. We can just simply right now find sites and pivot to Safe Ground and serve hundreds of people instead of, say, Lemon Hill that has an average of 5 people a night. And we can't use the Galleria indefinitely. It is heavily populated because of the intense population at Cesar Chavez Plaza. So it's a very unique area that has a population that can access it, that has been there for years. We need to have a response to all of these things, but the fact of the matter is, you set us on the path to create this plan. You set us on the path to find sites. We would still have to find sites for these overnight respite shelters, but it's not a good place to put our money, and it doesn't solve the problems on the street. It's good for emergencies, but this is, in my opinion, not the way to go. Another thing, we have agreed that the courtyard campus model is something that we'd like to pursue. And so once again, I'd also bring up Cal Expo. I don't know if you've had discussions with the governor yet, but this could solve so many of our siting needs, because if we're going to do tiny homes and really get roofs over people's heads, which you said that you favor, we need land to do it. And it is a golden opportunity at that site. So I don't support this particular resolution. I think that the larger master plan is where we need to go. I think that was really a better path for us to walk. That being said, with the right criteria, overnight respite really can help some unhoused people. Many will reject it. Many will stay outside when the weather's warm. And doing this all year long is very expensive. Look, I found the site and started the first triage center in the city. The council didn't embrace it at first. It was a costly program. It had a lot of efficacy. We put a lot of people into permanent housing because we had them 24 hours a day, as long as they wanted to stay there, and so that we could work on their issues. And we did house, I think, as I recall, 264 homeless individuals with deep issues, drug addiction and physical infirmities and mental infirmities. I think that we need to take a more thoughtful approach to this. That doesn't mean do nothing in the next few days. Certainly we can keep overnight respite going while the winter's still coming on. But, we can do more, better, faster by pivoting to Safe Ground, by bolstering our motel rooms. And we can also get away from the fact that this pandemic is still on. And for those who don't believe it, it's not just the flu. It's a fatal disease. I've lost people. Bridget Dean has lost people. We might lose a staff member's father. You know, this is not something to be trifled with. And doing congregate settings right now doesn't make sense. It makes a lot of sense maybe come June when we adopt the master plan, when the vaccines will be more prevalent, many people will be inoculated, and we start to open up. In that situation, congregate settings could be a bigger part of our inventory. But for now, I'm not supportive. Thank you, Mayor.
One quick clarity question. Would you support this resolution in June after more people are vaccinated?
Very conceivably. And the reason is this. I agree. We need a place for people to be able to access every day of the year. If they're ready to come in and they need shelter, that's great. But do I favor the nightly respite, kick them out in the morning? No, I don't think it's the best program. I really think it's emergent. But, you know, and so year round, anytime, for only overnight? No, but if we want to do triage centers, real triage, absolutely.
I'm going to turn over to Councilmember Valenzuela, but I would point you, Councilmember, and all the council members to Section 3 of the resolution, which defines triage centers and the instructions to the city management consistent with that definition as both daytime and overnight. So in fact, the resolution covers the daytime issue as well as the nighttime issue. Councilmember Valenzuela.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm worried about COVID too, especially as someone who was at the Galleria and got the call and had to go get the test, and it's been an anxious few days waiting for those results, as I know many of my colleagues up here who've also been at those centers, including the mayor and Councilmember Vang, Mayor Pro Tem Ashby did. But that's exactly why we need to do this. And part of the reason that, you know, my chief of staff and Bridget and our amazing advocates in the community have been working every single day on this relocation of encampments for the WX freeway is because the alternative is that folks are just going to get displaced into the neighborhoods and business districts, which is bad for them. It's bad for the folks who are in those areas, and it increases the rate of exposure. Part of what we need to do, even more so because of the COVID crisis, is stabilize. And my understanding of this resolution is that it's not just indoors, it is also outdoors. It is also going to be that. It's going to be the safe camping and tiny home sites that we've identified. And I'm glad we're doing it now, because as soon as we're done with the 300 tents at WX, I have to turn around and figure out a place for the probably hundreds of folks that are on the levee in Natomas before that project begins, right? So this whack-a-mole strategy, it's going to exhaust all of us unless we just make a concerted effort to do this at scale, which we've done before, which you pointed out very appropriately, Councilmember, with Winter Sanctuary. Our service providers know how to do this. They are ready to do this. There are people in the community that are ready to step up. It really is just a matter of resources. So I do want to talk about the budget, because with this $3 million, and thank you, Bridget and team, for doing that analysis on how much this would cost if we were going to do this for a year, $3 million plus the $2 million we did for women and children in the mid-year, plus the $5 million we originally gave Bridget, right? That's a $10 million budget for this department, which is less than 1% of our city budget, less than 1% of our city budget, to bring thousands of people into safety, to make sure that hundreds of people might not lose their lives, to help reduce the spread of COVID. I mean, this is going to do so much for this long-term approach. And for me, it's not either or. This is a part of this continuum. You know, what I loved about being at the Galleria and why they kind of had to send me home, Mayor Pro Tem Ashby basically had to say, I'm coming tonight, you're going to go home tonight and take a night off, because I wanted to keep coming, because I saw the same people every night. And what was so amazing about that is you get to know folks, you get to know their issues. And I'm not a trained professional, right? But like, I could tell you the 30 folks that are in that room every night that I know would do good in a hotel room, because I've seen them every single day and I know how they're at. I know what their needs are. And this is part of that process, is how do we intake folks so we can have the trained professionals get to know what they need, so we put them into the right path of service for them. It's not one size fits all. And so this will enable us to really understand. And every single night I saw people line up. I remember one night it was already raining when we got there. Folks were shivering outside the gates. It was about 7 p.m., so it was still an hour before we were going to open. And we thought we wouldn't have room for one woman And she just sat down on the ground and started sobbing. She started sobbing just uncontrollably because she really wanted to go inside, and we weren't sure we were going to have space for her. And she completely broke down because she didn't know where she was going to go to get dry and had really hoped to get that spot. And it broke my heart that we only had those 65 spots. It broke my heart because I know that this is just a matter of money, and it's just a matter of us committing to it. And I think in a city with a $1.3 billion budget, this is really the least we can do. And I don't think this is either or. This is a part of that bigger solution. And right now, it haunts me to think about how many folks have died in my district since I've taken office. It haunts me. And to know that we have buildings that are empty, that we have people who are ready, that we have experts in our community who know how, that we have folks on the street who want to go in, and we just don't have a space for them. This is just a matter of political will more than anything else. So I am proud to be supporting this motion today, and I would like, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay with you, to move the item, move your resolution as it was drafted for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Valenzuela. Councilmember Chenier.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple things. First of all, I just have a COVID question, and I have a request of the city manager to reach out to the county exec. It's really difficult to think about Meadowview and what will happen at WX, that we have 50 potential beds in each of those that are not being used because of COVID. And if there is a way that we can put aside a number of vaccinations for individuals using those shelters, that would give us 100 extra beds between the two of them. So if that's something I could request, Mr. City Manager, I know you're talking to the county exec on a regular basis. Is there a way that we can do something there so that we can take full advantage of the millions of dollars that we put into both of those facilities? And thinking about that for some of our other shelters as well. So that aside, I want to talk about a few things. I'm going to support this resolution, and 3 reasons for me. One is just putting it in context. I do believe it's a piece of a larger puzzle. I think the master plan is the right way to go. There will be pieces that we fit in as we go along, and this is an important one. 2 is, until we really get people off the street, our business community is never going to thrive, and we need our business community to thrive so people have jobs so they don't become homeless. So that's the economic reason for doing this. And 3, it's just the right thing to do. It is the humane thing to do. We need to get people indoors off the street. So I am going to support it. I don't think that the city manager's idea of putting kind of a subgroup of council people together to look at a couple of issues in operationalizing this is a bad idea. I think that we should do it. So let me kind of put out my questions on how we do that, and questions that I think we need to answer as we go forward. I don't have a problem spending the first $3 million on this, but I don't want it to be just an open door without understanding some things. One is, how many of these will we have? And is there some kind of baseline that we need to keep them open, right? So and I understand this is something that will take time to build up, kind of, for want of a better word, your clientele. But are we going to keep something open if we're getting an average of 4 or 5 people a night? Does that make sense? Is that the best place to put our limited resources as we go forward? So one question is, how many? What's the usage on these? And again, is there some baseline that we need to keep them open? The second question is about services, and what's the minimum level of service that we want to provide, or the maximum level of service that we want to provide? Are we just giving people, a bottle of water and a blanket and a pillow? Are we trying to hook people up with services while we have them? I think those are questions that are really important for us to do. I want to know really about the capacity that we have on these as a city. I understand and believe it's the right thing to do to work with our community partners to run them. But I think there also has to be we're a partner with our community partners, and what training do we need? What capacity do we need within the city to build? I mean, we're becoming a social service agency. There are reasons, good and bad, that we should do that. But if we're going to do that, what's the training that we need to do? And then I also want to, disagree with you a little bit on this question about whether or not we need to understand kind of baseline of weather conditions. We may do, let's say we do a respite center in each district. And I would also argue that we should really think hard about our community centers in taking a piece of each community center so it's ongoing. We have those buildings already, and could we utilize them in a way that makes sense for this? But let's say, for example, we had 8 community centers that we're using for this. We're still going to have days and nights where our weather conditions are very severe, where we need to do extra. Whether it's fires, whether it's heat, whether it's rain and hail. I don't know what that would look like, but I think we should, in addition to this, where we're going to have respite centers around the city, there will be times when we need to open more. And I think that there's an argument that can be made for looking at what that means. Is it wind, as Mr. Harris said, and hail or things like that? What does that look like? And then I think also understanding better what it takes over time to make these respite centers something where people will come. It does concern me, even if you look at the Library Galleria. I forget what Bridget said, but if we're 50 to 60 people a night and we can take more than that, or if we were 4 to 10 people a night at Lemon Hill or Southside, there's something going on there, whether it's a lack of trust or whatever, that people are not taking advantage to come inside. And I think we need to think hard about what that would look like to make these successful. So those are my questions. Again, I'm going to support the resolution. I think it's the right direction that we're going, but I do have these questions about how we operationalize it. And I would hope that between now and the time the city manager, if this passes, now and the time the city manager comes back to us to start looking at next year's budget, these are questions that we can answer and wrestle with. And maybe some subcommittee of the council to work on these items would be appropriate. Thank you.
So Vice Mayor, I just want to respond.
Yeah.
I think the questions are totally appropriate. And let me be clear, I have no problem with a working group and with operationalizing a plan. But here's what I worry about. And I think you know what I'm going to say. I worry that the working group and the operational plan and all that is going to take months to answer all these questions. And under the category of the perfect not being the enemy of the good, what I want and the intent behind this resolution is to have the city manager and his team exhibit the same level of urgency and frankly effectiveness. I praise them, effectiveness that they have shown since we passed the last emergency resolution and began this program. I don't want to wait. I want the same. I want every member. I want to open these things now, even if it's imperfect. And depending on the capacity of Steve Waters and our other providers and all that, those are real. And we need a longer term operational program and a budget, but not stop now. We gotta do.
And Mr. Mayor, I don't think I was saying that at all. I said I don't have a problem with the $3 million going forward.
Right.
I think our staff, they may be tired, but they have proven that they can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think that these are questions, and as I said, I would hope that the city manager can come back with this as we look towards next year. That doesn't mean to stop anything that we're doing now. I think we need to continue doing that. If nothing else, because I think we learn along the way as we do these things. We learned a lot from Railroad. If we go back to that, we've learned a lot from every shelter that we've worked in. Everything we've done, we've gotten better at. So I think we should continue doing it. The only other thing I did want to mention one other thing is I do have concerns. You know, we are becoming a social service agency in a lot of ways. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do worry on some of these things where we're going it alone. And I do think, as I think some of the callers said, Joe Smith from Loaves and Fishes, we really need to work hard with some of our partners at the governmental level to make sure that there's shared burden. This affects us all, and it's got to be a collective answer.
Thank you. Pro Tem Ashby.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it. Also, thanks for doing the hard work, Mayor, of not only bringing the resolution forward, but writing an op-ed so that in advance of the conversation, people of the city of Sacramento know your plan, right? And what this is sort of the system we have to work within here. And you're letting people know that this is what you're trying to do. And now it's up to this council to decide if they want to support it or not. I actually have some pretty strong feelings. I think I agree mostly with Councilmember Chenier, except for on one probably big area. Let me start by saying I think this proposal in general is easy to support. The details of it are to come, but the idea of do we or do we not create triage spaces for people is, for me at least, an easy yes. The COVID piece, which is what I hear Councilmember Harris questioning, is tougher and nuanced, and of course, hopefully very temporary. I would like to recommend that the city manager, in searching for an answer in Councilmember Harris's question and also Councilmember Chenier's suggestion, that we maybe look at how we can get vaccinations out. I know that the vaccination site in my district, in Jeff's district, actually it's in Jeff's district, but the one that Jeff and I have been working on together with Natomas Unified, is going to be hosting some Johnson & Johnson vaccinations this week. And I know the mayor tweeted out today that the fire department is also getting Johnson & Johnson vaccinations that they can do some outreach with. The beauty of that vaccination is you don't have to find that person a second time. So it's a great population to target. And Mayor, my office, Karina Talamontes, as you know, is got to be the regional star on figuring out how to get this stuff done. You might ask her to help you with the fire department in targeting that Johnson & Johnson vaccination out to the populations that both Councilmember Chenier and Councilmember Harris have identified here, so that we can take advantage of the shelters that we paid to build at a fuller capacity. So that's one suggestion that I have. As this relates back to the Daniel Bowers presentation, for me, in my mind, and maybe this is an oversimplification, but I feel like this debate between whether like warming centers and triage centers has been one of linguistics all along. And I'm ready to move past it. I am really proud of this council for making the decision to untether ourselves from somebody else making the decision for us about whether or when we get to do what we feel we need to do. And so that is my favorite part of this resolution and my favorite part of this discussion. I say this often. I've said it to Councilmember Vang and Councilmember Valenzuela in the last week. My advice to young electeds is always do not ever put the keys to your future in somebody else's pocket. And to me, this has always felt like that. The city's keys to be able to do something about warming centers, those keys have always lived in somebody else's pocket. And I'm glad we're taking them back. That way we're in control of when we do this. I do not think we are talking about traditional FEMA warming centers. That's not what we want to do here. This isn't like Daniel Bowers. This is a triage center that the mayor's describing and has laid out very clearly, if not in this resolution, in his article that he wrote. So for me, I think, Mayor, that's a great idea. I would like to ask you, as if I don't beat this drum enough, I already know I'm going to say it, to make sure that one of these sites is dedicated to women and children and families, because they cannot be mixed in with the other populations. It doesn't work. They need a special kind of provider. Obviously, the children cannot. You could spend 1 minute in Galleria and know it's not an appropriate place for kiddos. Councilmember Valenzuela and I think, and with the help, of course, of Bridget Dean, set a land speed record in getting kids out of that facility as they showed up. We need to continue that practice. That needs to be made a priority by this council. And I would like to ask you and Councilmember Valenzuela, who moved the item, if you would make that one modification, Mayor, if you would identify that one of the resources or some of these resources, and I'll ask Councilmember Valenzuela if she'll accept that amendment, that we would
I
carve
support
out.
that. I support it.
Okay.
And I accept that amendment. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Seconder.
Okay, and you're the seconder, aren't you, Mayor?
Did I second? Did somebody else second? I don't know.
I don't know. Probably no one did. Okay, and so
I'll second. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. And then obviously when I think here's where I disagree with Councilmember Chenier. I think our success here is going to be around not using city staff. I don't think that worked. I don't think it works. I think it's a problem for us. And I don't want to see us training city staff to be service providers. I just want to spend the money.
I'm sorry, let me just say, I don't want our city staff to be service providers, but we have to oversee this. And that is not something we've done before.
Okay, so you just mean the management of this,
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
then I
just
do.
to be clear, no, I don't want our people on the front line on this. We don't have that expertise and it's not worth doing that. So I apologize.
That was a little unclear in your statement. I understand what you're saying now. I agree with that. We obviously do have to manage these contracts and manage these groups, and yes, if we need training to do that, I think that's fantastic. I just would like to stick with community providers the best that we can and target them. As you all know, there are certain providers who are great with women and children. There are other providers who are really good at doing, what we have them doing now, but they're very different and they have different expertise. And I think we should target those populations. I think it's really important that Councilmember Valenzuela's point is $3 million. We're not talking about endless numbers of things. We're going to need our city manager to come back to us and tell us how many of these things we can do within inside of a $3 million budget. And I think that is a very reasonable number, given how much money Sacramento has right now and what we've done and what this mayor has done to bring additional revenue in, and the fact that this is his priority. And when you elect him, you elect his vision, and he has come up with the funding. This is a small ask, $3 million to be able to do this. And I think it's very reasonable. I would just also ask, and I think I've heard a couple other people say this, but I'm going to continue to say it because I think it's really important. The shelters themselves or the triage centers don't mean anything to us if they don't create a pathway to something bigger and better, something with wraparound services for people. Even if it doesn't include housing, just wrapping services around people and helping them get stabilized and maybe back with a family member or a relative or into a hotel for a while until they get on their feet. But there are a million different needs for the homeless population. The folks they're just as different as every child in school and every adult at work. And we want to meet them where they're at and not pre-assume that we know that each of them is going to fall into a cookie cutter approach. So making sure that we have those, that we continue to fund the programs through Bridget that we're doing, like the $2 million for women and children, that allows those other providers to create spaces for us to have folks go when they really are ready and they can begin to get themselves back on their feet. And we just give them the little bit of assistance that they need, Mayor. So that wraparound service component to me, and then I hold the line at the county here, Mayor. For every center we open, they must give us a social worker, because that piece is critical. And I understand here we're going to do what we have to do because it needs to be done, and arguing about it doesn't who should be doing it isn't getting us anywhere and hasn't gotten us anywhere. But we do this. Howard, city manager, you let us know if you need us to make phone calls. I think there's 9 of us who would make phone calls to support you. We need those county social workers with their computer posted up at every one of these centers that we open. And that would be where I would hold the line with them. So Mayor, thank you for letting me make those comments. And Howard, I look forward to seeing sort of the plan that you bring back that details this out, but you have my support. And Councilmember Valenzuela, thank you for accepting the friendly amendment.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Guerra, then Vang, and then back to Councilmember Harris.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First, I do want to thank the city manager, Bridget, and also First Steps for working on the triage center not the warming center down on Lemon Hill, it's only been open for 2 weeks. And by the time we got it open, and we know that the community there and the church group had asked that we move quickly on it, and it took us 2 weeks before we could even open that place. But the weather had turned. As soon as the weather got cold, we saw that more people came in. So we've been able to have had 58 visits, and I wouldn't be surprised that today we have a higher turnout than in days before. So I think for a couple of those things, one, making sure that we're looking at when we have need in those areas, that we're comparing, apples and oranges. And I'm really proud of the fact that we had a community that stepped up when we were asking and looking for places that they wanted to do it immediately. And because of that leadership, now we have another church who said, we want to do this too. So the important thing that I bring that up is that, First Steps took a modest approach on how to open up this center so that it would have a positive reflection for the community. And we haven't had one issue from the community, not one COVID situation in that case. And now we're looking at it as a safe parking lot model. You couple that with a great conversation I had with Dr. Drake from the UC Davis health system and their mobile unit that now has, opioid and alcoholism treatment, and that they can figure out how to bring these services to these locations. It's a component of the overall plan. These triage centers, and that's when I look at your resolution, it says in there specifically that these are triage centers that we're trying to get to. We're trying to get the full support for folks. And when we look at that as a component of the overall plan, it is a component, not all of it. We're not putting all our eggs in one basket here on an issue, on one strategy. So I'm here. I'm ready to support it because I do see the benefit that it's created. It's created a safe place for people who can't drive 18 miles to get to downtown for the only location. And that's the reality, is we don't have locations throughout the city. And the other thing that's come across from our District 6 working group on our master plan has been an acknowledgement that everyone who is on the street come at it from a different situation. They have different needs. So having a variety of options is critical. And the folks who are on this working group are St. John's Center for Real Change, Sacramento Self-Help Housing, Mercy Housing, all who have done a lot of great work in our district, but are at capacity. And that's the real issue here. We're doing a lot of great work, but we're at capacity. And so this resolution allows us to increase capacity. But I just, again, I think with the comments that Councilmember Chenier mentioned, I just want to make sure that this is all wrapped up as part of the overall master plan action that we're going to take in June, and to make sure that we do it in a way that is strategic. And last, I think, for one of the things that First Steps community mentioned is they haven't had a single COVID outbreak in their program because they are taking some significant precautions. And I think having the experts do that and manage that, checking everyone's temperature and making sure that they're looking at what capacity they can manage per facility is important. So all I'll say with that is we do need to look at where we can get the best bang for our buck, but this is a component of that. It's a tool in the tool chest. So glad to support it and glad to move forward here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Laloe?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm in 100% agreement with your resolution. I think it's a great step forward. You definitely have my support on that. I also agree with Councilmember Venezuela that $3 million might look like a big number, but when you look at the numbers from last year, where we had to spend approximately $1.6 million on just cleaning and code enforcement, towing, weeds, trash, fire abatement, I think there's some of that number that there's going to be some saving that's going to kind of balance some of this $3 million. I think one of my colleagues said that we're headed towards the social service category. I'm a little bit concerned about that because we're not in a position being social services. We're a body of government and we make decisions, make things possible. I don't know how great we're going to do with social services. So I'm not too supportive of that. My other question was the downtown library. With the summer coming around, are we going to utilize that continuously for this purpose? Or do we think the library might become useful for the residents of downtown? And the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, if we can utilize that, that would be a great step on getting this community vaccinated, where it's just one shot and done with. And that's going to be a great help also for number one, for them, obviously, to make sure they're safe and secure, and also for the rest of the community. And please keep in mind that, we think cold weather and we think, oh, it's inhumane for people to be out in cold, which I do agree with you. But when it's cold, you can wrap stuff around you to stay to stay warm. But when you hit 105 degrees, 108 degrees, there's not too much you don't have that many choices. So that can be equally dangerous or even more dangerous than your typical cold weather. So on your resolution, I'm all in, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. I have Councilmember Vang Jennings, who haven't spoken yet, then I'll get back to Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Steinberg. I'll keep this short. I just first want to thank you for your leadership and bringing this to the council. I think this resolution is a very important step in the process as we move forward on our comprehensive plan to really support our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. So I want to thank you and Mayor Pro Tem Ashby and Councilwoman Katie Valenzuela just for your Herculean efforts and all that y'all have been doing. I also just want to speak directly to also Councilmember Harris, and I want to thank him just for his leadership over the years, really on addressing homelessness in the city of Sacramento. And because I do believe he makes really valid points, but I do think that we can support both efforts because I don't see them as separate. And then I also just wanted to also uplift what Councilmember Shanair said. I really don't want to do repeating, but I think just to reaffirm what I heard and what I agree with my colleagues, that this is really part of a piece of the larger puzzle. And as we move forward, I absolutely agree with him on making sure we're working with other government agency because, we are not the expert, but we do have folks on the ground that can help lead like community-based organization. I do also want to agree with Councilmember Shanair, though, on the point of operationalizing our services. I think these are still really important as we move forward. I fully support this resolution, Mayor, but I do think that, for staff and for us to ensure that we know what the level of services are at these sites, that we have a baseline, because at the end of the day, I'm in full support of this, but we also have to show the voters, we have to be able to show our community really our outcomes and how are we doing. So that's really important for me as a councilwoman. And I say that because right now we have the Meadowview Navigation Center, which I am in full support of. And a big part of that is one, because it's addressing the needs for unhoused women. And the other piece is because we have the wraparound services that Mayor Pro Tem Angelique Ashby mentioned. And that's really important for me because if we are truly to be successful, we also have to think about the long-term strategy plan as well to ensure that folks who actually enter our system, that there is a safety net for them. For example, folks that are exiting them out of the Meadowview Navigation Center when they're ready to be housed, they get 6 months. But after 6 months, that's pretty much it. And so for me as a councilwoman now, I am talking to VOA, I am talking to community-based organization and city staff figuring out what does that look like after that 6 months, right? What is our long-term strategy plan? And so that's something that we also have to think about in terms of the long-term as well. And so I just want to be able to uplift what Mayor Pro Tem Ashby said, really regarding the county support. They are the ones who can help provide the behavioral health services that is so critical in this work. And we have to do our best to urge them too. Like, if I have to make those phone calls, let's do it, because the city can't do it alone. And at the end, I think, Mayor, you said it best. This is a moral responsibility, right? While we are not, I think folks may say, a social service agency, I would say it's a moral responsibility of us as a governing body to make sure we meet the needs of our unhoused neighbors, of those most left behind. As we govern, I think that is our responsibility as well. And just because another agency isn't doing, doesn't mean that we should not step up and be able to help our communities. That also means holding the county accountable, but that also means we have to do everything we possibly can. So with that, Mayor, I support your resolution and just want to say thank you so much for taking lead on this and for your leadership.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Vang. I've got Councilmember Rick Jennings.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for my colleagues, all who have spoken tonight on this matter. I drive from South Sacramento to North Sac, where I work every single day, and I refuse to drive in the freeways. I drive 16th Street going to North Sacramento and 19th Street coming back home every day. And I drive through our city because I want to see what it is that I can do to make things better for the city. I want to see what the problems are within the city, and I want to understand where the problems exist. And every day that I drive back and forth, I feel more and more helpless that as much as we're doing as a city, that I'm not doing enough to make things better. And what this resolution does, Mayor, is it gives me hope that we will learn from the lessons of the centers that we've run, that we will take advantage of every opportunity to put these in places where people are, so they don't have to try to figure out transportation to get to them. So as Angelique Ashby said, your resolution is easy to support. As Jay said, it's the right thing to do. And for as much as we're doing, we're not doing enough because too many people are out on the streets being homeless. And I feel helpless, as I know many of my colleagues do. So I too want to make sure that we take the lessons that we learned from running these centers, that we get over our fear of COVID and take advantage of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and make sure that we get these to these centers that we're opening up so that we can eliminate our fear that paralyzes us, and do everything we can to create a pathway, as Member Ashby says, to something better. And I think that's what this resolution does. It creates a pathway to something better. So I'm in support.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Jennings. I have Councilmember Harris, and then I'm going to make a closing comment. We're going to vote.
Thanks, Mayor. So this discussion has taken a little bit different arc from the way I read your resolution. If in fact your focus is on triage centers rather than simply warming centers, then I'm in support. You know, I have worked hard to create those kind of spaces, but look, let's look at what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get people indoors as best we can, and overnight respite is not the best way to do that, and especially in a congregate space in the pandemic. If you said to me that this is about triage centers and applying services and doing things similar to what we did at Railroad, then of course I'm in full support. The devil's in the details. I agreed with almost all of Jay's comments. So here's the deal. We need to not use our city staff to staff these overnight congregate spaces. We need to use outside providers. And if that's part of your resolution, then I'm much more in support. I just simply don't want to endanger our city staff who are not at all trained to deal with this. Additionally, we need to rely on Bridget Dean and Danielle and Lachelle to help guide us on where the efficacy is. I mean, they are the ones who work with the providers. If we're going to open a bunch of triage centers with providers, they know the providers and how to work with them, and we should rely on their advice on where we're getting the best results for what we're trying to achieve here. With all those things being said, if you agree with what I just said, then I can support your resolution.
I agree completely with what you said, and I would cite once again, just briefly, Section 4 of the resolution. The City Council directs the city manager to remove the temperature-related criteria to provide warming centers. That's the current policy, and instead adopt a city policy that overnight respite will be provided year-round in triage centers dispersed throughout the city. Triage defined as service-rich, whatever it takes centers as a first stop, as a navigation to help people end their homelessness.
And meaning 24/7, not just overnight.
Meaning 24/7, that's from Section 3, both daytime and overnight. That's exactly correct. So I agree with you, and I just want to sum it up, if I might, because one of the first points you made, Councilmember Harris, which I understood, don't agree, but I completely understood, and I think it bears addressing, is that I brought forward the master plan idea in January, and the council supported that. And now I bring forward this resolution. The two are consistent, the two are necessary, and a great city has to be able to implement two parallel pathways at the same time. And where they are consistent is as follows. I believe strongly that the policy and direction of this city should be as follows. Everyone lives indoors with whatever support and help they need to remain indoors. And I recognize that outdoor living, at least temporarily, in organized camp settings is okay, given the magnitude of the challenge that we face. But that's personally where I come from and what motivates this resolution. And so we have to do this. We can't do it alone. The county point is obviously relevant. We're meeting with the county. As I wrote in my op-ed, I thought the county demonstrated exemplary leadership during Project Room Key, where they took the lead and we got more people indoors than at any time in our prior history. And we were second chair there. We worked hard on it too, but we were second chair. What I wrote and what I believe is that we need that kind of urgency from all of our partners, including the county, in a post-COVID world, which is coming quickly. But we can lead the way here, as we are doing. And our community is demanding that we do everything. As Katie Valenzuela said, Councilmember Valenzuela, none of this is either or. It has to be cumulative. We need more, not less. We can't trade off one strategy for another. We need more beds, we need more roofs, we need more safe spaces. That's all this is, to keep pushing us in that direction. Appreciate the dialogue, appreciate the debate. I ask for an aye vote. Let's call the roll on the motion as amended.
Mayor, I have one quick question here, just for
Yes, sir.
clarification. I think Councilmember Harris brought this up already. So what we're looking for is sites to do 24/7 triage centers and bringing that back to the council for up to $3 million and for consideration as part of FY22 budget.
Well, yes, but I think the optimum is 24-hour triage centers, but I would not limit your search to 24-hour triage centers. If some sites are more appropriate for days and some sites are more appropriate for exclusively nights, I don't want to preclude them. And so all the above. And
So-
$3 million, I'm sorry, and $3
No,
million.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
$3 million is a starting point, because I'm going to want to talk with you and the city council as we head into FY22 about what it's going to take to implement not only this resolution, but the master plan, which is intended to get thousands of people off of the streets. Now, we do know we've got $112 million coming from, no, more than that, $120 million coming, excuse me, from the stimulus, plus 12.x million dollars for homelessness in addition to the $120 million. And so we're going to have resources. And the idea is to do whatever it takes here, whatever it takes. Go ahead,
So,
Howard.
and the second part of my question really is on the siting piece. I know that in parallel to the council's master siting initiative here, I'd be looking for the council members to kind of raise their hands about opportunity sites for
Yes.
between now and the FY22 budget.
The council members need to, and you're doing it, so I'm not lecturing because you're doing
Right.
it. You need to take the lead in identifying the sites, both for the master plan, but also for whatever it takes in the short term.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, and just to be clear, Mayor and City Manager, if we identify sites before fiscal year 22, like we're not waiting until the budget discussion happens.
No,
Thank
now.
you, Howard.
No.
Now.
That $3 million gets us through up to the FY22 budget.
Yeah, so I think that's really an important point. We've got today, it is the middle of March almost. The fiscal year, we're in the last quarter. $3 million will get us there between now and June 30th. You can be very aggressive. But then we'll talk about the budget for next year, okay?
Thank you.
Please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Ashby,
Yes.
Councilmember Laloe,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Valenzuela,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chenier,
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Councilmember Vang,
Yes.
and Mayor Steinberg.
Yes. Thank you all very, very much. Appreciate the progress in the process. Very good. All right, that is the end of our formal agenda. Are there members of the public that want to testify on items not on the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have two callers. May I have my first caller, please?
Yes, please.
Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Well, Mayor Diaz, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, anyway, this is Jeffrey Tartaguia, and after listening through the conversation, I will ask that please encourage better public comments for the future, because it is awfully hard to hear much of any of the council members through here. Tomorrow is when Sacramento Steps Forward will also be addressing some of these concerns related to the issues that we are currently hearing you listen and talk about. Finally, after 4 years, you get the concern about the homeless. I'm hoping that this will lead to and suggest one of the things that you may want to be putting in your checklists and guidelines is make it for 50 people. If you plan that way in the areas, districts, and everything else, you will address some of the concerns now, because a year later after this COVID crisis, that is very possibly the new norm that is going to be likely there. As Los Angeles, as San Francisco, as San Diego, it is very likely that all we are going to be able to tell to the federal government is that our homeless population has increased. But also, I will remind to Angela that last year when the homeless encampments had to get moved off of the levees, now you have to deal with the address underneath the freeway of the settlements and encampments that are there. But there's not very many encampments that have more than 50 people congregated in a place. A new effort might be made to see how do you substantially, beyond relocating and moving them, that you see how you can figure out getting an encampment totally closed down and removed because you found and put them into services.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
My final comment is I am listening and others need to hold you accountable. So thank you for your efforts. Please do better.
Thank you for your comments.
And
Next caller, please. Welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council. welcome to the meeting. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Hello, yes, my name is Lambert Davis. I'm sure pretty much everybody on the roster is familiar with me. Our company is To the Bay and Back Cheesecakes. As early as last week, we are now starting to be approached by many different groups in Sacramento. Mayor, I'm speaking to the mayor because you were with the pro tem of the Senate, and our family's very fond of you. That's why we voted for Measure A. We wanted some power to come that's stopping our family from being funded. There's too much money at City Hall. And by the way, those are the people who have not studied who we are and should study who we are. It's very difficult to become state and federally certified as a small business. You have to meet IRS requirements. We've met all the requirements. So really, To the Bay and Back is actually looking like a company that has more integrity than probably anyone who's been funded there. And at the same time, it's starting to really look very cruel how we're being treated as far as funding out of the city manager's office. That's being well founded. A lot of people are starting to say, what is the problem? And it's real crystal clear to me. Now, I hear a lot of times about funding at City Hall and how much you need funding. Well, we need funding too. It's been very cruel on our business, and we're still being endorsed by the Better Business Bureau, and we're still getting things accomplished. So all we need is 2/3 vote. That's what you talk about, equity and that sort of thing. So all I need is 2/3 vote to get funded. I mean, that's what
Thank you
it's
for your
down
comments.
to now.
Your time is complete. Will you make your final comment, please?
Yes, fund To the Bay and Back Cheesecakes.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Mayor, I have no more callers.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Are there council ideas and questions? Who's up? I don't see. I know, I just wanted to reflect on International Women's Day very briefly and just tell a little story that I think speaks to the progress we're making in our city. My communications director and I, Marian Valinga, have been working on trying to set up some Facebook Live interviews with some of our women leaders in the city on the non-elected side. Some of the people who have recently, taken on leadership positions, and even some who have had longstanding leadership within the city. And there are so many people, we don't know where to start in terms of who to do first. Maybe we should do one big thing, but I don't know. So we're working on it, and we're gonna try to honor as many as we can. But I just thought it was a really nice problem to have, that when you look at the numbers of women who are now leading various agencies, department. Thank you to the city manager again for your vision around diversity, and to my colleagues here, because we set the tone, and we got a lot of work to do, but that's the city is on the right track in many, many regards. I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you. Council member, who is it? What do you have? Mayor Pro Tem Ashby, go ahead. Mute. Did I?
That's okay. Yeah, it's all right. I got it. I have to do this on the record here just because I don't know another way. Mindy, we are about an hour and 10 minutes past the PMPE start time for today. So my question to you is, has it been rescheduled or what?
It has not been rescheduled, and we do have applicants in that Zoom waiting for you.
Okay, well, I have to at least give my colleagues a 10 to 15 minute break here, because we've been sitting in these spaces for a long time, need to be able to stand up for a minute. So how about if we say at 5:30, we will jump on that Zoom? Would that be okay? Colleagues that are on PMPE, are you okay with that? Yeah?
Would that be 5:30 to 8 o'clock or 5:30 to 6 o'clock?
it should, well, it'll go till it's over with, but it should probably be, I would think about an hour.
And Mayor Pro
I
Tem,
don't-
we do need about 15 minutes to flip the chambers, so that's perfect. 10 to 15 minutes is what we need.
Okay, great.
Angelique, are we taking action tonight at PNP or just interviewing?
Yeah, I think there are some action items.
That's correct.
All right.
Okay.
All right. See you guys in 15 minutes. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Is
Thank
there
you.
anybody else? I can't really tell. If there's nothing else to come before the city council, then thank you all very much. We are adjourned.